Set? Ready? Okay. Being 6:30, I want to call this meeting of the City of Laconia Capital Improvement Subcommittee to order. Could we have the roll call, please? Yeah.
Jay Forrester,
Yeah.
Bruce Cheney,
Here.
Charlie Sinclair,
Here.
David Doyle,
Here.
Peter Burnett.
Mark Haynes,
Here.
Bob Hamel.
Thanks. Okay. Staff in attendance?
Present.
Staff.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so everybody's here that should be here, except those that are not all there, correct? And the recording secretary, of course, is our own Kalina Graham. All right, acceptance of minutes from previous meetings. Were there minutes from our organizational meeting? Okay, we all have time to review these minutes, and are there any objections or corrections? Okay, sensing none, then we're going to accept the minutes from the previous meetings. And now the presentation of departments. I guess we're starting with the police department? Water. Oh, okay.
Sorry to disappoint you.
No, it just doesn't say here on my agenda what order we're supposed to go in. I know you guys all drew lots or something. You may proceed, sir.
All right. Just for the record, Seth Nuttleman here to represent the Water Department and the Board of Water Commissioners for their CIP presentation. You'll notice in front of you, I've passed out another spreadsheet that just pertains to the water activities. It might be a little bit easier to follow than the large spreadsheet you have for your whole presentation. Just so that you know, we're an enterprise fund, so we don't give or take to the tax base. Our capital purchases come completely off of the revenues generated from the sale of water. And you'll see the spreadsheet I send out, we have to play a balancing act, because basically the amount of money that we have that we can spend on capital purchases is derived from taking our depreciation, removing any bond payments, and our net income or loss, and that number, whatever it is when we do our final budget in December, depends upon how much money we have for capital. And generally, that runs about $500,000, between $500,000 and $600,000 for the department.
Okay.
That includes what we break down into basically two categories. The first one is street replacement of water mains, and the second one is capital purchases, primarily vehicles, things of that nature. So we have to go through and figure out how we're gonna try to allot those funds. I'll start on the first page of the handout, Union Avenue, Maine to Guilford. That's a project what we're looking at in regards to doing with the Public Works Department. That's the section, like I said, from Maine to Guilford. And it's about 3,300 feet, 3,000 feet. And we need to do a full main replacement there. That's been a problem area for us, just like we took care of on Lakeside Avenue and Old North Main. That particular piece of Union Avenue is problematic.
This number here, 1915, is that the year of the pipe that you'd be replacing?
That's the worst-case scenario. Some of it's 1930.
I remember years ago when they tore up North Main by the railroad tracks, there were wooden mains coming out of the ground.
We think
You
those
get
are
any
all
wooden
gone.
ones left?
We do not believe so.
Oh, good. It's true. They're made like barrels. They were beautiful.
We're looking at bonding that,
Yeah.
basically because it's such a large number. And
Be your whole budget.
right now, tentatively, that's on the docket to start in the spring of next year.
Okay.
The Court Street Bridge is a shared venture with the state. We should only have to pay 20% of the water work that's applied down there. And that is going underneath Durkee Brook.
Right.
And we've got an old pipe that they're actually gonna put some of the bridge footings over. So we're gonna do a directional bore down and underneath the brook.
That's good.
So that we don't have any problems with that when they put the new bridge in. Messer Street from Union to the railroad tracks. That's another one in junction with the Public Works Department. They're doing a large drainage upgrade down there. They're gonna probably be doing 600 or 700 feet. But basically between us, the gas main and Public Works, we're gonna be looking at replacing that whole piece from the railroad tracks back to Messer. That's basically what we've got on the docket for this upcoming year. When we get to the second and third years, we keep these streets kind of in motion, because a lot of it depends upon what happens as far as asphalt and DPW. Basically, if we try to venture out on our own, it costs us almost 1/3 of the cost of the job goes into asphalt. So if we can share revenues and share expenses, it works well for all parties. And when we look at these streets, we basically look at the age of them, flow characteristics, the number of breaks we've had, and again, road conditions.
You've had a lot of breaks at the intersection of Union and High, right?
Union and High, correct.
Yeah.
We had 2 last winter alone.
Right, and that's a rather inconvenient spot for a water main break in the middle of the winter?
It is.
Yeah,
It is. That's a slow fix right there on that hill.
yeah, that must be a bear right there.
You know, we've got listed in the following year, Morningside Drive, Woodland Ave, and Opeachy Street. Again, these are all streets that we'll have to wait and see in which order we're gonna do them in. We keep a master list, and then we bring it down to about 5 years,
Right.
so that we can see a ways out, but obviously you can't look much more than a few years out when you're talking coordinating street efforts.
Right.
And as you go down through, you'll see that at the bottom, down there, with the exception of the $500,000 for the bond next year, those numbers are running somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000, $300,000.
Yep.
So that's right around half of what our available funds will be for capital purchases. If you go on to our second page, there's some things that we've been doing a little bit every year that has worked out well for the department. Every year, we set aside some money for pump replacements. You basically never know when you're gonna have a pump go, and we have quite a few of them. We had one go Thursday night. That's probably a $20,000 repair. Just decided that it didn't want to pump anymore.
Where's the pump?
It's a Clearwell pump up at the treatment plant.
Oh, wow.
We have redundancy in our pumping, so if we lose one, we have another.
Right.
This particular situation has what's called jockey pumps, which can do a little bit. So we've got good redundancy there. Right now, alls we know is that it snapped the shaft going down in the vertical turbine pump. What caused it? The pump just came out today.
Right.
So, gate upgrades and hydrant upgrades is something we've been doing because obviously gates and hydrants are moving parts and they age and wear much more quickly than the pipe itself. So we found it advantageous to go through and do just hydrants and just gates as long as the pipe is in good condition.
And with gates, a valve, is that what you mean?
Correct.
The kind that are in the ground that you have to use a key to turn
Yep.
and all that?
Exactly. Meter reading system upgrade. We're on the radio read system.
Right.
We've got about 6,600 meters on that system right now, so we read them remotely from a pickup truck. And over time, those sending units wear out. So we have to take a certain amount of money so that when a unit fails, we can go in and change it and get back to reading the meter.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
The sending units that are inside people's homes,
Yes.
Yeah.
how often do they wear out? What's the life of those?
Well, according to the manufacturer, they're 100% replacement free for 10 years.
Okay.
After 10 years to 15 years, it's prorated, depending upon the age of the unit. And after that, you're on your own.
So do you find they're lasting longer than the ones we used to have?
The new ones are lasting longer. Some of the older ones didn't seem to have the longevity that we were hoping for when
Oh,
we
no,
put the program in.
I mean the ones that we used to all have before you could read them from the street.
Well, we used to have to read them and fill in a card, Charlie. and
That's
send it
correct.
in.
I get that, and I'm just asking. So do these last longer than those or not? I'm just curious.
No. The meters themselves are very dependable. It's actually the reading technology that's the
Okay.
problem.
That's all I wanted to know.
The only problem with the card was not a lot of people sent us the cards.
Gee, I don't know why.
Well, then, yeah, but then you get to estimate, and it's always, you know,
Right.
in your favor of the waterworks, I'm sure.
Eventually, it all catches up.
Yeah, it all goes down the drain.
Yep.
That was just a dig at technology, I guess. I was just curious.
Oh, we understand.
Good
Thank you.
question, Charlie.
Thank you. Right.
I've got in the, also you'll see there, a large purchase for us is the loader. There's $140,000 in there. $140,000 will not buy a loader. In the current year we're operating in right now, I've already set aside $65,000. So it's gonna be pretty close to a $200,000 purchase. That loader is a 2002.
The one you have now.
Correct. Repoint the brick buildings at base. It's been probably 15 or 20 years. And we try to maintain those, the old brick buildings and the slate roofs in good shape so that we don't have any problems. So we're gonna be looking at doing some repointing and some maintenance to the brick buildings down on Union Avenue. The other thing there you'll see under the next
Mike.
year is, roof. Part of the
Have
building
Waterworks one.
where the office is and where the pumps are is a flat roof. We've gotten about 16, 17 years out of it. We just patched it a couple weeks ago. And so we're looking at having to put on a new roof next year.
Other pumps holding out at the bottom of the hill, Seth,
Good.
the main pumps.
Yep, the main pumps are holding out well. We've just gone through and checked the motors. Those seem to be good. So right now, we do down the road look at doing some wet well where the pumps suck the water out of. And we've got a gate out in the yard that controls one of the intakes that's been problematic. So you'll see I've got that out quite a few, couple more years.
Which one is that, Bob? Which one are we talking about?
just that.
WW29
Oh,
on my number is a clear well and gate rehab.
oh, I see, yep,
And that's out $60,000.
yep,
These are the pumps that
Yes.
draw the water from the lake and push it up the hill.
yep.
Those are old ones, aren't they? Those have been there a long time.
The motors have been there quite a while. The pumps themselves, both of them have been rebuilt. I don't remember the dates, but one of them's 10 years, and I don't know about the other one.
So you have pumps at the bottom that push the water up, and then you have pumps at the top that pull the water up, right?
Correct.
Because you gotta go all the way from the waterworks up to the reservoir location, where the reservoir used to be, I guess, right?
Yes. And then we have pumps after it flows through the filters that have to pick it up again and put it in the tanks.
Right,
And then we have other pumps that actually reverse the flow of the water so we can flush the filters to clean them.
right, right. Intricate.
Couple other things we've got in there, variable frequency drive units. Those are very beneficial for cutting down torque startups. Problematic if you're pumping directly into a system. We're looking at those a couple years out. A security system. Half-ton pickup truck. We'll be looking at that in 2 years. That half-ton pickup truck is 2009. So it'll be about 11 years old when it finally goes away. The treatment plant boiler, I've got that in there to take a look at. That's the original boiler from the start of the treatment plant, so that's gotta be pushing about 27 years right now. It hasn't been a real problematic issue, but the boiler people tell me it could be. So we just kinda set some money out there to think about it. We're not gonna really jump on it, we're just gonna think about it. And then the next big up purchase you'll see there is an excavator, which again, I've gone through and proposing to break that down over 2 years, $125,000 each year, primarily because we just don't have the funding to be able to make a purchase like that in 1 year. And that excavator currently is 2008, so it's 10 years old, and it'll be 13 or 14 by the time it goes away.
How much you use that?
We use it, this year we've done a couple thousand feet of 8-inch pipe on Bowman Street, Merrimack Street. It does do some sitting. We do have to have it for emergency water main breaks, things such as that. So basically, over time, it ends up being a low-hour machine compared to a contractor who's pushing 40, 50 hours a week for 40 weeks.
So if you rented one, the cost wouldn't make sense.
We talked about it last time when we bought this one. It didn't make sense. I'd look at that again. Basically, we just have to make sure that we have it. So, I mean,
Understood.
obviously, it'd be a year-round rental.
Understood. Got it.
Yeah, it wouldn't be high, it's 2 in the morning and we need an excavator down here at the intersection of so-and-so, right?
right.
Yeah.
The rest of the items, again, we're looking 3 or 4 years out, maybe 5 years out. So a lot of those things go back and forth. Everything else on the system, again, we'll have to wait and see where it all falls when we start crunching numbers to get to the city council for after the new year.
Seth, can I ask a question about your initial project, 1, 2, and 3? Basically, 1 and 3, actually. You're gonna replace 3,030 feet of pipe for 500,000. You can do all that in 1 year?
That's one of the discussions we're having with Wes right now, is the fact that the plan is to try to do that in 1 year. What I know right now is we're talking almost complete water main replacement from Main to Busy Corner by the bridge.
Yep.
I understand that there's a lot of sewer work that's planned to be done there, and a lot of drainage work.
And the only question, the reason I ask is you're gonna bond this project, and if it goes into the following year, are your numbers still gonna be good, or you still be able to cover it?
I believe so. Basically, the idea is to bid the work this winter, so that'll give us the hard number. The materials will fluctuate a little bit, but usually only a couple of %, same way with your labor costs. That'll go out to bid, so you'll actually get a price per foot from the contractor to put it in the ground. So I think the increase will be negligible.
Yeah, and then you obviously you get the challenge of the road work and everybody else to work with, and so it looks like a lot of work to do in 1 year. I get the 500,000, but maybe some of that will go out to 2021 in some sense, and maybe you won't spend it all. But then when you talk about a bond, maybe it covers it, maybe it doesn't, right?
Exactly.
And so I know that you're doing estimating and you're doing it the best you can. I was just asking the questions.
Yep. No, and again, that Union Ave piece would have to go out to bid. We do the temporary water lines, we do the inspection, we supply all the materials, so we only go to the contractor for cost in the ground per foot.
Right.
We found it a good way to control
Now,
cost.
can you buy the job in such sense that they can't increase the following year? You can't do that, right?
Buy the job,
In other words, if it goes 2 years, you can't buy the numbers year 1 and make them eat them for year 2 if there's an increase.
the Public Works Department has the right to roll over the contract, if the contractor's willing to do so. That would have to be negotiated, excuse me, but it's been known to be happen in the past.
Okay, just, I'm set, thank you.
Good questions. Would never.
And then, yeah, that's a lot of work. The Messer Street, some of this we're gonna have to sub out. Sometimes we do it all ourselves. Sometimes we rent an excavator and a wheeler. I've only got 6 guys in distribution, and if you need 4 or 5 to lay pipe, everything else falls apart around you.
Right.
And I just have to be curious and ask a question. What type of pipe do you use now?
Class 52 ductile iron.
So is it that yellow plastic stuff we see?
No,
It's
It's
iron.
not.
no, yellow is gas. The plastic stuff is high-density polyethylene. We do that on some of the smaller streets. The larger streets still seem to be going with the ductile.
Got it.
Seems to be a national standard still to this day.
Thank you.
I just have one question. What are you gonna do about Jewett Brook if you're gonna go through the square? Same thing you're gonna do at Turkey Brook and go under it?
No, we're actually very fortunate. When that bridge got done, they
Well, that's a
put,
box culvert under there, isn't it?
that I believe is a box culvert.
Right.
But when that bridge, the box or whatever, got built last time,
Yeah.
the water department had the bridge contractor put in about 65 feet of ductile iron underneath it.
Oh, good.
So that
Just have to hook up
little
to that.
foresight there is going to save us a few bucks now.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm curious on your variable frequency drives, how much does it draw when those first drives come on? And I understand the upgrade to have less torque and less inflow for it, and I gotta follow up. Does it got a number for how much those pull?
It varies completely on the size of the motor and the lift of the pump. So if you're down on Union Avenue, you've got a 300 horse motor, and you're trying to pick that up a couple 100 feet in elevation, so you got a discharge pressure of 100 pounds. What it does is it takes that amperage and just slowly brings it up. It stops that snap from starting through the motor and the pump,
Right.
that quick pressure buildup in the pipe itself. And you can also, depending upon what we're doing in our backwash system at the plant, we can ramp the speed down so that we can control the volume coming into the plant if we take a filter offline.
Does the power company make you pay a premium for what you might draw when those first come up?
They look at a 1-year history. So if you all of a sudden, for some reason, say the VFD failed and the pump just came up under full load, they call that peak demand. So when they see that, they set a certain rate to have that power available to you, assuming that at some point in time you may go back and use that volume of power.
So they do make you pay a premium for your potential onrush.
Correct. And I believe it's either a 6 or a 12-month window that they go back and look at that. If you stay with your VFD usage, you never hit that peak load, and then that comes down in your billing. It's advantageous, but I'm not sure it pays the bills.
Just so you know, it's 300% starting current for a motor typically, and a soft start is about 20 to 25%. Not that I know that, but I do.
I appreciate it.
Where did we get these guys? I don't even know what these questions are about.
Variable frequency drives are used quite a bit for soft start on motors. It keeps the demand charge down, it keeps the torque off the shaft, and it's a good idea.
It
really
sounds
is.
like it. Keep talking, I love it, I'm a geek
sorry,
for this stuff.
I do this crap for a living, so I'm sorry.
Oh, good, don't be sorry. At least you have a living, we appreciate that.
It's not crap, by the way, that's Public Works.
I have one more question. The small
Go ahead.
building in front of you, there seems to be some ocean in there. Is that something that, Waterworks owns?
Seems to, what building?
Okay, so right from the edge of Irwin's, and then there's a small building, then there's your main buildings.
Yep.
And it's right up on the road. There's been some work in there. Is that just for the widening of the road, or is that a building that you guys own? And
You mean work in a building
no,
or in front of it?
Yeah, it's that white building there. Is that something that you own?
Yeah, we own basically from Irwin's all the way to the, what used to be the telephone Verizon store.
Right?
So we own the big brick building, the 2 houses in front of it,
That's what I'm asking.
okay? And then the next big building over, which is gray, which currently houses the coffee cake, the cupcake lady.
The
And that's-
cupcake lady.
Yep. And yes, we own that, we rent that out. Because basically the whole back of that building is storage.
I saw some work up there today. People are on the roof on some of your slates.
Yeah, yes, that was yesterday or today?
Could have been either.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yesterday. What we found is those slate roofs are a little touchy when they get that old. There's very few people who want to work on them. So we found a gentleman who will, and basically every year we bring him in to do a little preventative maintenance. Because every year you can look and see some of them loosen up, some of them move a little.
Nailheads rust and then they drop. I live next to the Baptist church in
Yep.
Lakeport, and
Yep.
I find them in the spring in my yard.
Yep, the nails rot out and down they come. So, and they have to go back and reattach them with clips from underneath. So we do that once a year, usually about $600-700. I think it's money well spent.
Yeah.
I have one more question. On the Weir's tank, or is that in the old Weir's tank, is any of that still being utilized for water?
It is not.
It's all into the new one now?
Where is
Correct.
it? Where's the old
It's
tank?
over by the old brickyard,
Yeah, up above.
Cedar Lodge?
by Cedar Lodge, the old
Oh,
brickyard.
okay, oh, right. Then they
Those
built
two.
the windmill thing, right?
No.
Lighthouse.
Lighthouse.
The lighthouse,
Yeah,
Close.
sorry. Get your
But there's still a
terminology
new tank there, right? There's still a new
There is.
concrete tank next to the old.
Correct.
Yeah.
You'll see on page 2, one of the last things I have is demo the old Weir's tank.
Oh, I was on the planning board when that was approved. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
That's one of the things that's always there, but something else always seems to trump a necessity.
So it stands just being there. Right.
Luckily, you can't see too much of it from the road.
No. Chris?
This is a non-technical question. I see you're spending $25,000 on a security system, and I was hoping you could tell me what that's gonna cover.
Yeah, right now, currently, all of our tanks, booster stations, treatment plant, some things down at base are all covered partially through a SCADA system, where we actually have hatch alarms, temperature alarms, high and low pressure alarms. That's all monitored and can go directly to cell phones and iPads for employees in off hours. What we're looking at here is strengthening that a little bit, specifically around the treatment plant and the tanks, and also installing some cameras to go through and so we can actually see what's going on.
Yeah, so it's more of a monitoring than a security.
Yes,
Yeah, okay,
yes.
makes more sense, thanks. 25,000 for a security system seems
Crazy.
very sophisticated, so, but for a monitoring system.
Yeah,
it makes a
and
lot
this would cover probably 10 remote sites.
Yep, fair enough.
Are there any other questions for Seth?
Thank you, sir.
All right.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your questions, gentlemen. All right. So, next up, the police department?
Good evening, Al Grayton with the Police Department. Here with me is Chief Canfield as well. This is for replacement of our line police vehicles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's get to that page.
Thanks, Amy.
Come on.
Tell Jen to help me. Tell Jennifer to help me. I don't have the big one here, so let's look at these.
We're right in the back, everybody.
I keep track of it.
Ah, yes, police vehicle,
Yeah, so I'm fine. Just give me the number. Please, please.
of course.
So each year, the Police Department requests money for new line vehicles. When we do this, we look at the age of the current vehicles that we have, the mileage that's on them, and the repair costs that they've been associated with them as to what vehicles we plan on replacing. This year, we would, or for the next fiscal year, we would request $175,000. This would be for a replacement of 3 line cruisers with all the equipment associated with them, new partitions, light bars, radios. Everything we have in those vehicles has been used several times. It's well over 10 years old. The radios are also old and need to be replaced before those fail. We'd also request this year to get a half-ton vehicle for the ACO. Currently, the ACO is driving a 2008 van, 123,000 miles on it, and it's estimated to be about 136,000 miles by July of next year. Because it's the regional ACO, so she has more miles that gets put on the vehicle now. That would take the van out. She really doesn't need a van. Get a pickup truck, and I have a cap on that. Of course, it'd need to be lettered, stickered, have a radio and that type of equipment in it as well. So that would help replace that vehicle.
What would be the use of that?
For the ACO?
Yeah. Pickup truck?
Yes. Yeah, rather than the van that she's driving now. That she really doesn't need a van. She can put her cages.
Oh,
Because anything she has, she puts the cages and stuff in the back for animals, cats, dogs.
Okay, I understand.
Those type of animals.
No
in the
bears.
back of the, no bears.
No, that's fishing.
She doesn't deal with wildlife.
What? Yeah, you said half-ton?
Yes.
I get a special load for that.
And going forward in 2021, 2022, we'd go back down to our requested 135,000 for those years as well.
Yeah. How many line cruisers do you have in service right now?
In-service frontline cruisers,
Yeah.
12 fully marked line cruisers. We have approximately 20 vehicles.
Right.
Three of those are vans. One is the ACO, one is the old ACO van that was well past what she needed it used for, and we use it for transporting stuff to, say, the range or moving stuff around.
Interesting.
And the other is our transport van that's 3 years old. We also have my car, the chief's car, 2 detectives' cars, and then the CRO car. They're all unmarked cars.
And those 12 front lines, they're in use like round the clock.
So every car gets one?
Pretty much, yeah. When we purchase a new line cruiser, we try to limit the number of officers that are assigned to that, so it'll be used two shifts a day rather than 3. The older ones where the mileage is getting high, we stack the officers in those to get the most use out of them. So we try to keep the line cruisers, under 120,000 miles.
Yeah.
How many cars per shift do you put out, Captain?
Minimum of 4, plus the supervisor.
So
On
the
midnights, it would be
12
3 plus
front
the
lines
supervisor.
includes yours and the chiefs and all that?
No.
This is the,
No, those aren't frontline cars. They're not marked. They don't have the
So you
light
put out
bars on
4
top.
per day?
4 per shift.
Shift.
4 per shift.
Yeah.
That's as long as there's nobody working a traffic detail or any other associated detail. They need to go to some other place to pick up a prisoner or something like that.
So you use the same cars 24 hours a day, basically?
Yes.
So where are the other 8?
Those also get used. Like I said, the newer ones, like the 3 we got last year, they'll have 1 officer, maybe 2 officers assigned to them to try to keep the mileage lower on those. So they'll last longer. And then the other vehicles that are higher mileage, we put more officers on them to get the miles through them.
So
Try to,
I think what the council is getting at is if you've got 4 in use at any given time, where are the other 8? What are they doing?
they may be sitting, or they may be out on a road detail or a traffic detail. We all have the highway safety details that we also do, so you could have 1 or 2 cars out doing that, stopping vehicles.
So you need a
Fully
few for
marked car those. Yep.
special duties.
And then we have, this
But
past,
when-
this
when
past
one
winter,
sh-
we had problems with a lot of the vehicles. There's a lot of the weather-related crashes. Several of those were ours. So we had a car in the body shop every month.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I understand you need the redundancy, it's just.
Yeah, and then vehicles need to go out for service and maintenance or warranty items. We had 1 car that was at Irwin's for a week last week.
And sometimes you'll have more than 4 vehicles out on a shift,
Yes.
obviously,
Yeah.
right?
4
Like
just
peak
patrolmen,
times and-
1 for a supervisor,
Right.
and then, yeah.
All right.
excuse me,
Thank
sir,
you.
do all the cars SUVs now?
No, we have 5 SUVs currently.
And you're gonna, these replacements, will they be SUVs?
Yes, they will be.
So you're going to the SUV product because you think that's the best product for the team?
Better for what we do, for the officers getting out of the vehicles, getting prisoners in and out of the vehicles. The sedans are just too small, and they're actually gonna stop production of the sedans next year.
So eventually you'll have all SUVs as your
That's the
as
plan,
your
yes.
staff, okay.
And those are all all-wheel drive, right?
Correct, all-wheel drive.
How many miles per year generally goes on the vehicles, recognizing that there is, a sliding scale for your usage? What do you consider average usage per year?
Average use per year is probably gonna be about 25,000 miles.
And how many years will a vehicle, what's its planned obsolescence?
Yeah, again, it all depends. I'm driving a 2008 Crown Vic right now. We have,
That's a nice car.
it is, I love it. We have 2 other, about 2008,
Love the Crown
2009
Vic.
Crown Vics still in the fleet. Those are detectives' cars. Those, again, they're at like 125, 130,000 miles, but the amount they can get used by the detectives, there's no need to replace them right now.
So what is a high mileage car?
For
130?
a line car is probably 120, 125,000 miles.
But that also doesn't take into consideration sitting and running.
No, it doesn't take the idle
And that's a
time,
big part of
Yep.
the
Yep.
wear and tear on the engine.
sitting at traffic
Yeah.
details and that type of stuff.
Typically, you get like 4 to 5 years out of a frontline car, then it gets backseated to like a secondary use, like a detail car, like a detective car, something that's not gonna be run quite as hard.
Who kind of manages that? Do the watch commanders, the shift commanders do that, or do you have like a maintenance officer or something?
One of our lieutenants oversees the entire fleet
Right.
to include the maintenance on them and the car assignments, and then it gets passed down, so each shift supervisor has the car assignments for each individual officer and ensures that they drive them, and the mileage gets monitored.
All right.
So, but typically, like if you ask, we have 12 marked frontline cars.
Right.
On a day shift, if you have 4 officers or 5 officers working, plus a sergeant, plus you have a school resource officer at the school who takes a car, and then you have a couple in training, the cars get eaten up very quickly.
Sure.
So one of the reasons why we're getting rid of, we have that Humvee that we got from the government that we don't use.
Yeah.
We're surplus in it because there's absolutely no use to us to have that military vehicle in our fleet, so.
You could raffle it off during Bike Week.
In color.
Hey, that's right. You know?
Excuse me, is there a maintenance team that kind of says it's time to
it's a
move
good
this car
idea.
out and move these, get a new
You'd be
vehicle
on.
based on spending money on maintenance, or no?
There's so the entire fleet's overseen by a lieutenant,
Yep,
and then there's fleet maintenance officers for each shift. They're required to track each car's maintenance by mileage for maintenance purposes, oil changes, repairs, that kind of stuff. And yes, they have input into the selection of which cars are the worst, which ones costing more for repairs. All of those stats get reported monthly to the police commission and to myself as well. So they're looked at all the time as far as how much we're putting into cars for maintenance and repairs versus how much it's costing to keep them on the road.
got it, thank you.
One more question on that. A lot of, in diesel fleets and stuff like that now, a lot of these cars monitor themselves and are able to put out, when stuff is up. And is there any part of that in the newer vehicles that are coming up, or is it still, I got 25,000 miles, I gotta change the oil?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything for that for the fleet, for the police fleet. I know
Right.
they offer that in like the fleet for construction, like pickup trucks and stuff like that.
A lot of it's in diesel
Yeah,
and timber
I haven't seen
and
anything
stuff
like that for the police fleet.
And when the officers gas their cars up, they call in the mileage, that gets entered in our records management system, and the fleet maintenance officers run a report, and that tells them, this car's due 400 miles for an oil change. So that's monitored that way. Any other questions on the vehicles?
Thank you, Captain.
The next one, PD02, is overt surveillance cameras.
PO, doesn't it?
Is it not on yours?
Radio upgrade is number 2, PO2.
It says PO. Like, we thought you were the
Oh,
post office
mine
there
says
for a second.
PD02.
Yeah.
We don't have radio upgrades on this year's.
Police radio
Looking at
system
probably
upgrade.
last year's.
Yeah.
Get the right year.
Oh,
Must be last
to
year's.
me, I'm sorry.
We don't have to talk about that.
Oh. Duh.
I'll get back and show you kids.
Well, I made the
Should've
same
done with-
mistake.
Me too.
Yeah, good point.
I thought I had it.
Yeah, so this number here is not disseminated out, so they're saying is the police radio system upgrade is not this year, right?
No, that was last year.
Got it.
They handed out last year's
Oh, I see.
things along, so you may be looking at the wrong one.
Yeah, we could be,
Okay, I got it.
because the next one after that is police dispatch system upgrade.
Yeah, you're looking at
No,
the
that was
wrong
last
one.
year.
Last
Last year,
Last
yeah.
year.
Look at the,
It
look
was
at
the
your other
packet,
thing.
it was the
your other
packet
one.
we got the first
Oh, the first
meeting,
night?
from the first meeting.
Oh,
yeah.
I can get that out, I have that too.
So the number represented on last year's for the vehicles is 135,000. This year we're requesting 175 because of the additional
All right.
You wanna do it?
truck.
I'm sharing with Charlie.
I think the committee at the last meeting asked for last year's scoring sheets.
Oh,
so
that's probably why, I'm sorry.
Just for reference.
That's what we get for asking for something.
As Mike reads it all. you should be able
Confused.
to read it.
Like that, I'm picking up
Okay.
what there is.
All right, here we go, PDs, now we're done. Next one is police cameras.
Well,
You have that. This is it right here.
oh, I
This
see.
is the second,
Got it.
75.
Okay, found it.
Excellent,
DD02, police cameras?
yes.
Ah.
Ready?
Tell us.
Okay. I don't know, how many years ago did we purchase the other?
Probably about 5 years ago.
About 5 years ago, we purchased 5 covert cameras. Those were placed, we used them to place them in nuisance areas around the city, also in the downtown area, so we can monitor vandalism, that type of thing. Those cameras that had been previously purchased were not purpose-built for what we needed them for. They were hard to work, hard to maintain. We had a lot of problems with them breaking down, not being able to be used. We sent 4 of the cameras back. One of them worked fine. It was the first one we bought. It worked great, so we kept that when we sent the other ones back. The company gave a small refund for those cameras, and we purchased this past year, it's a Crime Eye overt camera. So it sits on a pole, it says Crime Eye on it, it says police on it, so everybody knows what it is.
Right.
These cameras would be used, as we were gonna use the last ones, for those nuisance areas. Rotary Park, downtown. Those areas where we need to have extra eyes when we can't always be there. All these cameras get recorded back to the police department on a dedicated hard drive just for the cameras themselves. So if we were to find an issue where one of the cameras was placed, we could go back through the images and find hopefully a suspect, that type of thing. We also use them, for Motorcycle Week to help monitor traffic, crowds, that type of thing. If there happened to be an incident, we'd be able to go back and pull information from that as well. We also use them during Pumpkin Fest. So we would request, we did purchase one last year, we'd request to purchase 5 for the upcoming year.
Can you see these cameras at your station? Are these monitored?
Yeah, we
And
monitor
do they have
dispatch.
joystick, pan, tilt, zoom?
They can PTZ, yeah, they're all PTZ, they can change the direction of them, focus in,
Nice.
widen out, yep.
Good stuff.
I have a question. So are these on top of the ones we have now? The 5 more you're getting?
So
Or-
we had 5.
Right, you sent,
4 of them never worked.
right,
very
so you
well.
only have 1 now,
So we have
technically.
one.
Okay, so, all right, I understand
Well,
that.
we have one of the old ones, and then we have the new
One new one.
Crime Eye, which is this camera.
Okay, and are there cameras in the garage?
There are.
But these aren't the same ones?
No, these are different. These are a portable camera that could be mounted on different poles, as long as there's a power source.
And since
So
we're
these are
talking about,
5 new covert cameras. Is that what
Over,
they're-
over,
right?
over. So
Over.
they're about this tall,
Yeah.
box is about that big, says Crime Eye on the side.
Huh.
We're supposed to have our patch put on it as well, on the last one that never showed, but just so it stands out.
Sure.
You know what it is. We're not trying to hide what it is.
So it's a deterrent as well as an evidence gathering tool.
Correct.
It's both, right?
So not knowing anything about this, does it have facial recognition?
Does
Or
not,
would it, okay, would it be capable of being upgraded or added to or reprogrammed or?
To add facial recognition? I can tell you that this particular company that makes these they are the leader in this camera system. These cameras will do way more than what we'll probably ever use them for, the camera itself. Now,
Okay.
If you switch out the module, they're using them for actually recognition in schools now to detect odd activity. So depending on how fast the pixelation goes and stuff like that, but these particular cameras with these lenses are not designed for that. So,
Facial recognition is a software.
yeah.
Well, that's why, not
know.
knowing
Yeah.
anything about it, that's why I was curious.
Yeah.
These would be used as a deterrent effect, that people would see the camera and maybe choose not to paint that graffiti, not to do that particular crime. And if they do, if we get a report that our dispatch center they're monitored live, that they can hit the joystick and zoom over and capture the incident as evidence, but also to advise officers respond to the call too.
Are these going to be clear enough? And here's one of my favorites about the local newspaper. They show you a picture of someone committing a crime, and you have no idea. You can see fuzzy. Will this give you actual recognition?
Fuzzy with a baseball
Yeah.
cap.
Right. She's gonna pull up the.
Well, it's
video
probably
for you
that
right
they don't
now.
want you to know how clear.
I mean,
it is.
because in the bars, you
Government.
can see everything.
The one we have, we just set up downtown for the pumpkin town.
Right.
That's a live view of it.
Looking up,
Nice, all right.
up Main
It's-
Street.
see it.
to
That
North
is
Main
not
Street.
a clear view.
So they're high in the air, you said.
Oh,
right?
that's pretty good
You can put them up as
resolution,
high as
yeah.
you want.
And
So
do you
when you
guys
pull
have
that
mine?
onto a hard drive, it's
You
even
have
even
mine?
clearer.
Yeah.
It all depends on where we are.
Yeah, I mean, because $1,875 for a camera.
Is that where
mounted
the
and
pumpkin
working,
tower is
it's not
gonna
that
be?
bad.
It's gonna be, yeah,
Yeah.
it's on the.
Well, no,
$15,000
$15,000 a
The
piece.
salon.
Oh, okay,
Nice
oh, I'm
one.
sorry,
Microwave
I
tonight,
did some
They walk-
division on the,
walk through and make
so I
faces?
I
Mania
divided
is
the
about to
number, maybe
descend.
it's 18,000 each,
Yeah, so it's super.
total?
Now, you don't use these for lights, you
Oh,
use these
15.
just for cars.
And that's
We're
installed?
not looking for red light violations.
Well, if you have the digital
Oh, you do?
interface,
Goes around and up.
that's faster that way.
Got it.
They need like another server.
That's
to do
a
all the
good,
computation.
that's a good view.
Yeah,
It
I
is,
mean,
and that's actually.
And you gotta have the data.
That's pulled up on a hard drive,
It's
it's even
something
clearer.
like New York
Really?
Cities,
That's
they
good.
You can zoom in,
issue
you know, if there were
benchmarks
crimes,
and
you can
people
zoom
take
in out.
pictures.
Yeah, that,
And
no,
those
that's.
cameras just
I-
looking
first of all,
for
I
it.
Good
never
view,
run
and,
away.
and if,
I stopped it.
sometimes those cameras need heat in the winter and all those other fun things, and I've
It's
done a lot
kinda
of camera
scary.
crap,
It's a
but, that's a pretty good view.
And that-
Orwellian.
You can, yeah. You can, mount those then to your, to a, you said where there's power, would they be able to, I don't quite know where that is, to the, traffic signals, to a telephone pole?
Yep, it just
These
needs 110
things
volts.
have anything that are self-powered and a tower that goes up?
Solar.
Yeah, or is self-generated that it can be put in some spot that's not,
Yeah, unfortunately, not that lasts for a very long time because they draw so much power that you have to, they just don't make the batteries big enough to power them for even a
Right.
24-hour period.
Right.
But if you look, that camera is mounted right outside of the hair salon at Church and Main Street on the pole. So if you want to see what it looks like, it's right there. This particular camera was very well researched. The electronics in this thing are professionally made. New York City has over 20,000 of these deployed around New York City, watching bridges, terrorism targets and stuff like that. You see these in Washington, D.C. All the major cities is using this particular camera. It's called Crime Eye, and they come in that white box, and different configurations. You can use different types of global cameras and stuff on them, but it's all the same company. So,
would you be able to use the same camera like you guys have setups that pull radar for speeding down a road? And some of those, trailers have cameras that can pull the license plates. About 5,000 extra, or whatever back in the day, and send that ticket. Are you guys looking at that at all for traffic control, or just for, observance of
these
nefarious
these
deeds?
cameras are, we're gonna use these cameras for crime prevention, crime control, and that's it. We're not looking at, I think you mentioned it, as far as looking at the intersection for red light violations and stuff like that. That's not the purpose of this camera. And that's not what we're gonna use it for, nor are we gonna use it for license plate readers or anything like that.
Counselor Hamlin?
I was around, and so was Councilor Ava, Councilor Doyle, when we first started purchasing these. And I believe you purchased the first one through the department, and they were $5,000 on those ones we got. And the city, through the Capital Reserve Fund, bought 3 for $15,000. So if 4 got returned, what happened to the $15,000 that the city put in?
That's what we put into this camera that we currently own. Was the return on that.
Okay, so those were 10, right? That camera you got now,
These cameras are about $15,000 a piece.
15 apiece, okay.
Yep. I can tell you that was done not by our generation. It was done specifically aimed at the cost of those cameras.
Yeah,
Not that $5,000 is not a lot of money, because it is a lot of money, but those cameras were not quality cameras. They weren't researched like they should have been, and bottom line is you pay for what you get.
yeah.
You know,
And
you
I
pay
think we asked that
$15,000
they
for
be
a camera.
researched well, too,
You know,
when we
Yeah.
first bought
And
them.
any issues we had with those other ones, they got sent back to the company, they sent back, no, they're fine, they work great. And they wouldn't, you put them up on the pole and they wouldn't even power up.
That company was designed, they made other products, and this was kind of a sideline that they went into, and it was not their go-to company, and it's quite
Now,
obvious.
I know the intersections where we have cameras, that we can put a recording device, which I think we did at Court and Main at one time,
We did.
that would record 24 hours a day. But I know the quality of the cameras aren't that great for police work or that kind of thing, is what I was told.
That's correct, yeah, you
So-
get a very global view.
Yeah, it's a
and
fisheye
images,
camera
fisheye,
that's on
fisheye
there.
view.
Yeah.
Fisheye
We only
lens,
recorded
yeah.
for, I wanna say, like 20 days when we put the hard drive in there.
Yeah, it's quite a
It
long
was a very
time.
short
It's a
window.
terabyte recorder, I think you put in there.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is, where we're upgrading these intersections and stuff, is there something that we could look into to make that optical device better for, I mean, you know, if you have views of accidents and things like that, I mean, that would really help at intersections, and that's where a lot of accidents
Really,
happen.
you're gonna have to have a separate camera system, because the ones they're putting up now are for traffic control and are designed to pick up movement and such associated with cars. If you want to have the ability to do individual people, you're gonna have to get a different camera system that has the ability to zoom and do other things. It's a totally different purpose, and the camera's designed for a very
Yeah,
widescreen fisheye in our program to look at certain spots.
They make these particular cameras in different configurations for permanent installation at intersections and in different areas.
Well, just technology changes every 6 months, so
Yeah.
I didn't know if the ones we're putting up, I'm sure the one we put up down here is already outdated, and, you know, it's,
A couple of the ones that, in other places I've seen, it's always been dual camera, one for this piece, and then there was actually one spot we had the ability to zoom, there was a focus piece for it to rotate. That piece, because it was operated differently, did have limited ability for the police department, but it wasn't a traffic camera controlling intersection system, it was really more for monitoring, to determine what we needed to do to tweak at an intersection if something was up.
okay.
Any other questions? All right. Captain?
Good with the cameras?
Yep. PDO 3?
TDO 3. Police training equipment. What we would like to do with our training is to bring us into the 21st century. Right now, if you do use of force training, firearms, that type of thing, your only options are airsoft, simunitions, or those type of trainings. The issues with the simunitions, if we were to say, hey, we want to use this room to simulate an active shooter in this building, the guys in here, we want to come in and train to take that shooter out. We come in and we start firing paintballs everywhere. They're very hard. You could take out windows, you could take out monitors, you can take out, you know, you mark the doors, mark the walls, that type of thing. It'd be hard to clean. What we're looking at is a system that uses laser beams.
Yeah.
They're eye-safe lasers. You'd retrofit, or we'd purchase separate guns that have the blank firing barrels. Can't fire, will not load a real round. In the end of those barrels, they have lasers.
It
The
fits
officers-
the actual service weapon?
Yep, it would be just like this.
Wow.
Be the service weapon, it'd look just like it.
It's a separate weapon.
Yeah, it'd be a separate weapon.
But it
that
would
we
feel,
purchase.
it had the same feel
Yeah,
as
the
a real
exact same
weapon?
thing, the magazine, everything.
Wow, that's great.
And with the blanks, you have the recoil.
Yeah.
They have systems out there that are just, you know, you can just click, 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 but the officer doesn't get that same sensation as shooting. And the lasers are, you have to be pinpoint accurate, just like with a bullet. It's not gonna be a wide painted laser, so if you know, if you're close to it, you hit it, you gotta be accurate on the mark. And what would happen is the officers and the bad guy would be wearing a vest. This vest picks up on that laser beam, and it'll transmit if an officer is hit. They have what's called a pain compliance. There's a small belt that goes with that that gives you a light, well, it can be adjusted from light to a more extreme electrical shock, just to the stomach area. So
What's
it
the,
gets,
what's the point of that?
the
So
point
you-
of that
It
is.
makes
I-
training fun, Charlie.
I can come in this building and say, we're training, we're gonna look for the bad guy.
Yeah,
So I see Charlie and go, oh, stop, bad guy. Bad guy fires blanks at me. What do? I'm like, well, okay. I keep firing at Charlie. Charlie fires at me and I get a, I'm like, I gotta move and get out of the way.
okay, I understand
My
now. I was
adrenaline
just
comes
curious.
up, My heart rate comes up, I start to sweat, I get that, you start getting that tunnel vision. So
Right.
we don't train that way. We don't have that type of training.
Yeah.
To be able to put the officer in that moment, to make it as realistic as possible without having to actually be shot. So this helps the officers know that when the bad guy's shooting at them,
They're getting
That it's
hit.
real.
blanks,
Yeah.
whatever,
You're getting
I'm just
hit.
gonna keep shooting at you.
Right.
But you start getting a jolt, you go, oh, I just got hit, I need to get out of the way. I need to find some cover.
Yeah.
I need to be able to get to the bad guy, but still protect
You
myself.
need to be able to call for help and all
Right.
that if you're
Yeah,
down,
you can
right?
do all of that.
Used to do
And
that, Chris?
this system would help the
I got
officers
shot.
get that inoculation to that stress that we
great.
don't necessarily get in our normal training
Didn't have that stuff.
because we don't have that feedback from it. So,
Okay, I mean, I wasn't being smart about that,
Yeah,
I
no.
just was, because it seemed like it was like unusual punishment, so, but the way you explained it, it makes
yeah,
perfect
it's,
sense,
it's,
so.
it's a, I just got hit, or I
Yeah.
almost got hit.
No,
need
no,
to
I
move.
understand,
Need to
yeah.
Find someplace to hide.
Gonna pay more
Need to
attention
get other
for sure.
people in, get backup.
I'm sure they
Thank
let
you.
you try it out, Charlie.
No, I'm all set, thank you.
Yeah, we'd love for you to be the decoy.
You could be the bad guy, just for a day.
I'm all set with shocks.
So use of force is one of those things that you never, you know, here in New Hampshire, we're a safe state. We don't have a lot of police-involved shootings every year. However, it's one of those, you know, low uses, low occurrences, but super high liability.
Right, right.
You know, if an officer shoots at a suspect who's holding a hostage with a knife to their throat or some other configuration, and they miss, and they shoot the hostage, they shoot an innocent person behind them, or they can't react and they don't defend themselves and an officer gets killed in the line of duty, they're all terrible outcomes. Not only from a criminal part, where, you know, a police officer goes to jail if they're wrong, or, you know, an innocent civilian dies, but also from the fact that we have to live with that, and the fact that, you know, someone dies and they can't defend themselves. Aside from the civil aspect of it, where now we're gonna face a huge civil liability lawsuit because of that. So currently our firearms training consists of live fire range training,
Right.
use of force classroom training, we teach them on the laws and how to use that stuff, and then we have that force option simulator, which we got on a grant close to 10 years ago at this point, you know, which is scenario based, so we bring it together using low light simulations, multiple targets, multiple people, moving people, target discrimination, deciding is this a bad guy with a gun or is this a person just producing a license?
Is this on a screen in a room, or
Correct.
is it something bigger?
Yep, nope, it's on a screen. It's an 8x10 screen that's projected with like a PowerPoint, basically, computer-driven. So to tie all that stuff together, we do what's called interactive use of force training. So it's a real-life scenario. An officer wears this vest, they get briefed, hey, you're going in there, this is the scenario. They go into it, their adrenaline's pumping, now they have to react to it. If they make mistakes, they get the zap, they learn how to use cover and concealment. It's not gonna hurt them, but it's gonna get their attention. And that's where we're going with this.
Yeah.
How much equipment does this buy?
That would equip, was it 12 officers, I think? Or is it 10?
8 officers and 2 bad guys. Because you need to have the bad guys so they know when they've been hit as well. They wouldn't get pain, it would just be a little buzzing. So you could be the bad guy, Charlie.
No, I'm all set. I appreciate the offer.
Variable, right?
You can tweak it, right?
Taser run, turn it up.
Yeah,
Right.
where's the change?
And like I talked about with the airsoft and those types of things, you have to wear a face mask.
Right.
You have to wear a hat. You have to wear a bulky vest. You have to wear gloves, because those are the things that are gonna get injured if you get shot with a simunitions round.
Right.
So you can't see if a bad guy starts yelling at you, you have no, as an actor, you have no facial expressions that you can see. You can't really see what they're doing.
Right.
Where this is, it's just like us standing here. You don't need any of this protection on you. And it's very safe. It cuts down on officers getting struck maybe someplace you don't want to get struck with a round, those type of injuries. So this will help make everything safer for us.
So just to give you kind of an idea, it's like next Saturday, the 20th, we're doing a full-scale exercise at the middle school for a simulated school shooting in progress call. So working with Homeland Security, they funded the whole thing. So our officers are going to be dispatched to what's reported as shots fired at the middle school. They'll have to react to this. It'll be real time based on officers that might be working an average shift. It'll have to be commanded by, you know, a sergeant or whoever arrives, whatever the scenario is going to be. So you kind of test all those capabilities. That scenario is being done with blanks. They're being done with blank adapters. So you'll hear the sound of like a real gunfire, but you have no idea of target acquisition, actually, you know, acquiring the target and actually being accurate, or if the officer is just going in and going boom, 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 boom. You have no idea if they're even hitting what they're aiming at, or if they're just spraying and praying. Yeah, exactly. So this kind of brings it together.
Wasn't there an incident in Concord, and time spent so quickly, where they're doing an exercise in a bank or something?
It was under construction, yeah.
And someone got hurt.
Yeah, so that was, that was an unscheduled training exercise. It was on a midnight shift, which I give them kudos for taking downtime and using it in training. That was a firearms instructor that set that training up and did that. And yes, the proper safeguards and the proper checks were not done. And yes, fortunately, no one died as a result of it. That did happen. I can assure you, not that you can never 100% guarantee that nothing's going to happen, but I can tell you when we do these, we have very strict protocols. When we go to the range, when we do these types of exercises, people, are checked and triple checked to make sure that there's no live ammo in those training scenarios. But certainly, my worst nightmare in a training exercise when you're trying to teach them how to do the right thing, and then a tragedy could happen.
So Chief, I like what you said. You're training for what is essentially a low probability, extremely high risk situation. Officers could go through their whole careers without discharging their service weapon. I hear about it all the time. But yet, that one day, where they have to respond to an active shooter or to an ambush, you're going there to serve process.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, I mean, we lost a chief down in Seabrook, was it, or?
Greenland.
Greenland, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, trained police officers, just all of a sudden, pop, pop, pop. What happened? 3 down,
Yep.
So if it's a training issue and it involves the safety of the police and at the same time decreases the likelihood of, improper discharge or use of force, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, in a post-Ferguson, everyone remembers Ferguson, Missouri, a community pretty much the exact same size as Laconia, different demographics, but certainly they had a lot of issues. That shooting sparked a lot of controversy around the country, as you know, over the last 5 years. I think it was about 5 years, as far as police use of force. And it's amazing the amount of differences there are from, really small one-person police departments to major cities.
Right.
The differences in levels and quality of training that officers receive. And then on top of that, you take, part-time certified officers to experienced officers, and the training is just incredibly diverse, and probably not the best of things. And if you read the President Obama's 21st Century Policing Task Force, one of the things that was addressed in that is the police use of force and the lack of training that we have across the country as a whole. I think our training program here in use of force is very, very good, but I think there's always room for improvement. I think this is something that could take it to the next level.
All right.
Excuse me, Chief. I think you guys, first of all, safety first, and I'm all for protecting our officers, but when you implement this program, is there something that doesn't get implemented? I mean, do you augment your program with this and remove something else, like the paint gun thing?
Right now, we don't have the simunitions training. We used to. It got phased out when we switched firearms because, again, that was a costly system. We haven't done simunitions training in a long time, so we've relied totally on the use of force simulator and then the live fire range training. So this is a void. We don't have.
Okay, so I was just asking because I thought this is a good plan, but financially you would be doing less of something else that would save you operations money or something
No,
like that.
we're not doing anything currently for the interactive use of force.
Got it, thank you.
One last question on your live fire exercises. Are these static targets, silhouettes, stuff like that, or is there movement involved in it, different scenarios where you have to react?
Yeah, I can tell you up until probably about 2-3 years ago, we did a lot of, it was very static. It was a paper target. You stand there, you shoot, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, left hand, right hand. That's the standard qualification course. The standard qualification course means absolutely nothing to me. All it means is that you know how to operate a handgun, you can make it function, and you can hit what you're shooting at. It's not combat shooting, it's not preparation for a use of force encounter. So we've totally revamped our firearms, our live fire training program. So yes, we do incorporate movement into it. We've incorporated movement in teams as if we would respond to an active shooter incident. This latest one that's going on now for this month for October is actually moving. They're doing some physical activity. They're doing some jumping jack, push-ups, that kind of stuff to get their heart rate up. then they're engaging it, so it's totally different when you engage a target, and you're breathing really, really heavy, your tunnel vision comes in like this, so that's what we're trying to do, so we're trying to replicate what an encounter would be like, so that's come full circle on that one.
Okay, any other questions for the captain or the chief? All right, I think that's PD4 now.
PD4, the replacement of computer hardware. We have one main server at the police department. All of the terminals for all the officers to use, the chief, myself, any office that has a computer terminal in it has a monitor, and then there's also what, I don't know how it works, Robin can tell you. It's called a thin client. So your mainframe plugs into thin client, and then you plug into that with your monitor, and that's how you connect to the mainframe. You probably know more about it than I do. Most of the thin clients that we have are over 10 years old. They make a new product, which is probably about the size of that Dell there. And on the back side of it, it houses the whole thin client and everything there. Right now, they're on the floor, sand, dirt, dust, all that stuff. So it's all one piece. It's the monitor and thin client also installed in it. And also our officers tape out their reports. When they take a report, they tape it out, and right now they have to go down to the booking room and it's a standalone computer down there that also connects to the main server, but it's a tower computer. They have to plug into that to download their reports and put those on the mainframe so the secretaries can type those out. This would allow them to also just plug right into the side of that and download all their information there, rather than have to make that extra trip. And if somebody's in the booking room being booked or something, the computer's tied up, they have to wait. Hopefully remember to do it later. And there would also be one laptop for the the roll call room. That gets used at least 3 times a day just for roll calls, and then other trainings that we do for use of force and those type of things is done on that laptop that's 6 years old now, and it's in need of replacement.
Yep. Any other questions about PD4? Come on, Mike, you can do it.
Just thought.
No, you said PD4, so I'm going to hold right here for now. I'm going to wait till you say any other questions.
You had your 3.
I'm curious if you guys were able to get your carpets replaced last year. Was there any upgrades? Did that come to you? Did you get there was a discussion on a
Drying cabinet?
yeah.
Yes. Yep,
It's,
that did
it's
get
a,
approved.
it's a
We got
parks
that.
item. It's right above it.
Yeah,
It says Parks Non-Departmental, PN01.
Oh, there you
Laconia
go.
Police Department carpet replacement. I was gonna ask him about that. How'd you get Parks to put in your carpets?
Facilities maintenance.
Yeah.
Ah,
They're the ones who take care of all the city buildings. Parks and Rec.
oh, clever.
Except for public.
Yes?
We
Except for Public Works?
We did get the evidence drying rack.
Well,
and,
of course.
We're working on getting that installed. Certainly very much needed, and, you know, we appreciate your support last year on this particular committee. Unfortunately, a lot of our technology has not been addressed in the last 20 years, so addressing it all at once is costly. I can tell you, the evidence drying rack, we needed to do some change around the outer evidence room where that machine went. So in order to save some of the costs, we've kind of done some of the carpentry work ourselves and some of the drywall, and so the captain, myself, you know, that's what we do on Saturdays, so. And we set the fire alarm off last Saturday.
Just as a protest.
My gosh.
Yeah, we did get the drying rack.
There we go.
Well, you know, that's the thing about the technology, what the counselor said is true. By the time you get something installed, it's obsolete. The pace of technological advancement is so fast right now that it's nothing but a money machine. It's really, really hard. Like you said, you had a 6-year-old laptop. I have one
So
that's
fast.
6 years old. It's virtually useless now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
Slow, they don't.
they're
run,
slow, they get all clogged up, so to speak,
Yeah.
you know?
yeah.
It's like my arterial system, so. But enough about that.
It's gotta eat the high-quality bacon. That's
It's,
all.
it's not enough bacon, is what my doctor told me. All right, Any other questions for the captain and the chief?
Thank you very much.
Again, on behalf of the committee, our condolences for the loss of Commissioner Mayu.
Yeah.
Is the calling hours are going to be next week on Tuesday, is it?
Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m.
And, please express our condolences to the rest of the department, because he was a fixture for many years. And he was a good friend in the neighborhood when I grew up, so I've known him all my life, so.
Very good man, and certainly will be a big loss.
Santa Claus to a lot of people.
The skinniest guy in town plays Santa. I just don't understand it. I never did get that. It's like Armin is an elf, you know? and
Oh,
Just,
it was great.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Oh, my God.
I didn't either.
Oh, you didn't know that Armin?
No,
Oh, I think it was in the paper.
no, it hasn't been in,
Dead Sunday.
hadn't been in the paper.
He'd been ill for a while.
Is that right?
Is he?
Oh, yeah? I knew the whole family growing up.
Yes.
They were on Irving, and we were up on
Okay.
Union Ave. Do we have, I think we're out of time. I guess the other
Right, that's-
departments will have to, oh,
You can go as fast or as slow as you want.
no,
with this
no,
group.
no, I'm just teasing.
And no, I'm not gonna show you all 45 slides. There's only 26.
Okay,
You do have this.
Saving that for the big kids.
right.
I kept some backups in there, just in case you get particular
Oh,
questions.
here we go. All right.
Okay, Wes Anderson, Public Works for the city. Agenda tonight, basically, it's somewhat different from last year. We'll talk about the changes between last year and this year. What I call the program year, it's what we're budgeting for next year. The out years are the years after that. Talk a little bit about sanitary sewer fund. It's one of those it's a self-generating revenue account. So whatever revenue it earns pays for it, so I won't spend too much time. And then we'll update a little bit on the projects that are ongoing and upcoming. Okay, some major changes. Court Street, everyone knows it's under construction.
Is it?
Having some heartburn,
When did that
getting
happen?
everybody passed, but we're working it. The Court Street Bridge is the next phase in the Court Street project. Advertised in April, be constructed in September of next year. Basically, we're trying to do accelerated bridge construction, so we're gonna build it between September, Labor Day, after Labor Day, and before Columbus Day, get it done. That's the objective. City share right now is estimated at $317,800. Only 40% of it has been funded. So we'll have to fund the rest of it in this upcoming cycle to match our 20% share. The rest comes from the state. After that, the next phase will be Court Street, Fair to Main. It's the spring of 2020, so it's in this fiscal year that we're dealing with, and you'll see more on that later. Academy Street Bridge is now fiscal year 2022. We flipped it to get Court Street Bridge moved up earlier. And due tile construction, due to the cost of it and what we had to do, we've broken it into phases. Phase one will be during this year's drawdown. We're basically gonna build the drainage pipe that takes it from Apiche, brings it underneath the railroad tracks, and puts it into the first manhole on the other side. And then we're gonna line the existing pipe and do some repair work on it that takes it from the due tile and shoots it straight to the lake. So they'll have their own separate drainage system for their property. They'll maintain it in the future, and our water will go south towards the railroad tracks and go across our property in the New England yard. Okay, and then a new one, and more will follow on the next slide. We have to bring potable water to 3 houses on Endicott Street East. Basically what happened in September of this year, Department of Environmental Services changed the standard for 1,4-dioxane. That's one of those pollutions associated with chemicals that's typically in trash. Prior to this date, we had 3 properties that, although they were showing positive for 1,4-dioxane in the well water, they were below that ambient water quality standard where we had to do anything. So it was just monitoring. With the new standard, even though their concentration hasn't changed, they no longer meet water quality standards, and we have to provide them with potable water. So in the interim, we'll be making arrangements to provide them with bottled water until such time as we can provide them with a form of potable water, whether it's some sort of residential treatment system that we install on the property,
Initial research indicates that may not be feasible, but there's all new systems coming on, and our consultants are helping us with that. The other option, the only other way to do it, is we extend the water line 950 feet, and that's gonna be someplace in the vicinity of about $450,000.
Where are these houses, Wes?
It's Al Mitchell's. So it's basically from Summit going down to just before the old entrance into Laconia Disposal Gardens, into it. So it's Al Mitchell's on his side, and then the two properties that are across the street.
It says it's an ether. 1,4-dioxane?
Yes, that's the chemical that's causing the problem right now.
Now, we extended the pipe down to that colony.
Yeah.
Correct. So basically,
So I remember we had problems there. We were doing
Right.
bottled water there.
basically,
thing.
the properties that we extended it for didn't meet the old standards, and so we built the water line to get
Right.
to it. Now, they changed the standards, and we gotta extend it again to get water to those other properties.
Beyond that,
Correct, beyond the column.
900 feet beyond that
Correct,
colony?
yep.
Where's the dioxane coming from? Groundwater
No,
contamination?
it's coming from the groundwater that's coming from
The old dump.
the old landfill.
Oh, that must
We are
affect the water.
responsible for that landfill, so we have to do it. Now, there may be some grants that we could get for it. That's not 100%. Depends on when that money's available and how hard we get pushed to provide them with potable water.
We
Does that
put-
mean, I'm sorry,
ahead.
Counselor. I was gonna say, does that mean that the landfill, that capped landfill is leaking?
No,
or it's just something you can't really contain
Correct.
because it's a volatile?
it's a volatile piece, and remember, our cap is above it. That landfill was old enough, it wasn't what they call lined, where they put a liner down first and then put all the stuff on top of it. So it is still gonna have stuff, even with a cap on it, that leaches into the groundwater and then goes someplace.
Wow, okay.
Okay, so we're in the initial stages of figuring out what we have to do for this.
Is there any kind of a remediation that can be done at the source or? at
That's
the
what we're talking
landfill?
about, where there may be some form of treatment system that we can do in the houses. But 1,4-dioxane, everything that I've read about it, is very difficult to take out of the water.
You can't like vent the,
It's a liquid,
it's a liquid.
it's a liquid,
so it's not like what they do for arsenic.
no,
But that similar thought is what you're hoping for.
correct. It's something that we're gonna have to do.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we setting aside any money year to year to maybe come up with that 450 and just
At
do
this
it?
point, this just came up, so this is what we're gonna have to talk about this year, but we're still on the hook,
Right.
from an operations budget, we're paying to have to give them potable water.
So can they can use that obviously to flush and to shower?
Yes, they just can't drink it,
Cook with it or?
right. Anything that's gonna get into a food product or into the body.
My gosh.
Okay. And this year, although I haven't addressed it, we have to do PFOA, PFAS testing for all of our landfills that we have operational. So we don't know yet what the results of that are gonna be.
Right.
Probably it'd be a good idea to set aside some money then.
Correct.
So we
We're gonna
can
have to do
actually
something.
bring lake water to
Right.
them.
Okay. Other changes, just to bring you up to date, traffic signal for ADA compliance for these 3 intersections were funded this current fiscal year. Over the winter, we'll be putting the packages together to get the work done come spring.
I have a question on that,
Yes.
if I may. Yeah, I know you're gonna guess what I'm
Yes.
asking. On the left turn arrows,
Correct.
are you gonna have blinking yellow
No,
arrows?
This is strictly for ADA compliance.
So that has nothing to do with those lights
Nope.
on that fact?
What this is gonna give us is countdown timers. It's gonna give us the acoustical chirpers.
Yeah,
And then we're gonna have to realign the infrastructure, sidewalks, to match. Because the acoustical timers, you have to be in a direct line.
Oh, right.
Can't to be offset,
right.
so.
So those are the times where they count down, you can hear it?
Correct.
No, they, I think,
They both count down and they chirp.
right,
Oh,
right. Okay, so I realize that's not on you, but I'm gonna ask anyway, or maybe you can help me, or maybe you can, Wes. When you're redoing this, though, is the city gonna be putting in those lights, like the state's been doing other places, for the left turn, so it doesn't
Yeah,
say solid red, and it'll be a blinking yellow?
At all this point, well, hold it, okay. You're talking about a whole different piece.
I understand that, I'm just asking why I got you
You're
here.
talking, it's a policy change, Okay, that
Okay,
could
so
just
I'll
be
go to the city
programming.
council. I'll just go to
You'll
the city
find in many
council.
states they're doing it now. They're going from, for the left turn, they're going from green if it has a left turn arrow to a blinking yellow on it, saying
they
you
do it
can
right in
still
Concord.
make the left if
Right.
it's clear.
Yeah.
But it's programming and it's policy, and it's not one where you want to do it at one light, you want to do it at all lights. So it's
That's set up.
consistent in the city.
That's fine.
It's more of a philosophical change. You're gonna have to train people to get used to it, because you're gonna have some issues the first few months as people are starting to get used to it. But I worked in other states where we've done it, and it was interesting, let's say, for the first month and a half, and then all the residents were used to what it meant.
Well, somehow they're doing it in Concord now, and not everywhere, just certain places, so
Yeah,
that's
it's-
why I'm
It's
just.
pretty much a programming change. We may have to do some hardware change with the
Okay.
lights,
Right.
but it's more realistically a philosophical change that the council's gonna have to be willing to do to be able to implement that. We are gonna have some initial problems that first
Well,
month.
at Lakeport Square, you're going to make Clinton and Elm
On the same
on the same
phase.
phase.
Right.
So
Be
it's not,
fine,
they're
that's-
gonna be doing
Yeah,
this.
Right.
that's how we grew up, that we did it for years, so, you know,
So, but
somehow we did it.
but now it's, you
Somehow
stop,
they'll
they're
do it.
stopped.
So you can do it, but that's really a policy decision we wanna make. We wanna figure out when we wanna do it, and then how do you
around.
educate the public before you do your implementation, so at least they're a little bit trained
But
before you
you're
turn on
planning
the
to
switch.
do that, right?
Pardon?
I think you're planning to do that.
Not at this point,
Oh,
but
you're
I'm
not?
more than happy to consider it, I'll be honest. It's something that, from a policy standpoint, we're gonna have to think of.
Wes, I can tell you, when I was still working in Concord, for 5 years, the light was solid green arrow,
Right.
followed by a red light,
Red arrow.
a red arrow, and they changed that to solid green, meaning both sides could turn.
Current, right.
Then after a certain amount of time, I think timed on
Right.
or magnetic strip, then everybody could go and it flashed yellow to turn.
Correct.
It was, at the time they started, it was the only one in the city. I'm here to tell you, it didn't take 5 minutes for everybody to figure it out.
But I'll just say, I was in North Carolina, and I could tell you, we had some intersections. It was
Well,
real interesting for a while.
That's North Carolina.
Well, I guess the only thing I
Smarter than
would say to you is, I don't think it's impossible to
No,
start
it
Way
isn't.
past
with
that
one
now.
or two lights.
Right.
I don't think we have to change the whole city on Tuesday.
The only thing I would say to that is, if we're doing it, if it's on Union, you probably want to do all of Union at the same
Yeah,
time.
that
Right,
makes sense.
exactly.
Yep,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Because otherwise, they may be expecting at the next signal
Yep.
to match.
I
So,
would agree with that.
yeah.
But that's mostly a software.
It's mostly a software. You may have to do some hardware changes, for light bulbs and some other piece, but,
Minor.
yeah.
You got LEDs throughout the city now, though. I
Right.
think. Yeah.
Yeah. You can tell because you'll see some of the LEDs are out
That's
in the
fine,
bulb.
but they last so much longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm back to that intersection in Lakeport.
Right.
And I'm really curious because at some point I wanna jump out of my truck and run over and see what it's doing on the other side. If you're coming south and you're in the lane that's going turn up into Elm Street,
Okay, so you're going you're going southbound on Union.
correct?
Right.
Okay,
Southbound on Union, I'm going to take a right turn onto Elm Street.
correct.
It's flowing from the other way. It says no right turn and it's
Correct.
a red light. And that's fine. I get that.
Yes.
But then the red light changes and the next 3 cars go through. Is that something on the light that I can't see, or why do they do that?
They're running the light.
No, not necessarily, not necessarily, because you can make a left turn there. It's just a solid green.
Oh, right, right.
It's a
that's
solid
right.
green, and you know, guys, and that's what we do when we learn how to drive.
So-
You yield to the right side, people
I never
yield.
learned that.
the northbound-
No, but people are asking, geez, why is that happening?
Green means
Because,
go, doesn't it?
because they
The
can
nor-
do it.
The northbound traffic on Union has a dedicated green arrow for a while, and then
Right.
it changes to a green bulb. So
Right.
after that point, you can still make the left, but you're yielding to oncoming traffic.
Right. And then at the point that the left turning traffic comes off Elm heading north on Union, that's when it changes to a green arrow on the right turn lane where he is, right?
And now, part of the issue that we have for that no right turn on red sign on it
Right.
is also because of the railroad tracks.
Right.
Even though hardly any trains are on them, you still have to prevent right turn on red when the train's coming by.
Right,
So-
but it also prevents there being competition with all the traffic coming off
Correct.
Clinton.
Yep.
So, you know,
Yeah. Well, part of the piece that we're gonna be fixing as part of the Elms, the Union project for that piece, is we're gonna resync the equipment with the railroad. So theoretically, it will allow us to do other things, and when the railroad comes by, it will prevent any right turn traffic.
I don't, you probably have it in here, but are we gonna talk about that stacking lane too? Northbound on
Well, we
Union?
could do it when we hit that piece.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. Analysis on DPW building settlement, it's underway. You'll see more of that coming up, because it's gonna get interesting discussion on that. Replace the retaining wall at the Weirs Boardwalk was funded. We're gonna do some more research over it. We've got another idea to lower the cost, targeting to have it done before Memorial Day. Downtown pedestrian bridge, we already talked about. Basically, we know a lot of the structural is starting to show some significant rusting. It doesn't hold a lot, it's over-designed, but we need to get an engineer in, assess it, determine what really needs to be done. And then we're probably gonna have to do some repairs, sandblast and paint at some point. And then Moran Road landfill site, we're in the process of selecting. Basically, I got a little bit of seed money to begin the process of doing the remediation for that landfill. And you'll see more of it coming up as we go through.
What is that? Tell me what the settlement, the DPW building?
It'll be
Talking
real
about the old
soon.
Manta garage?
Yes.
It's sinking?
It
Oh,
is.
yes.
Well, that's all filled
Yeah.
land
Yeah.
in there. I mean,
Well, yeah, you'll see what we
Wetfield.
found in a bit. Okay, program year, in other words, the year that's coming up. Again, we already talked to a degree. The next phase of the road project on Court is Fair to Main. We're gonna do that in the spring of 2020.
right.
And what the plan is to bond it for $1 million. The funding source to pay off of that bond is that dedicated transportation fund that, you know, when you register your car, so much money goes to it. That's what we're gonna use to pay off. Now, a good portion of this road, the drainage, goes to Fair Street and then goes down Fair to go underneath the railroad tracks to get to the lake. We have to upgrade that as part of this project to be able to handle the flow that needs to go underneath the railroad tracks. Safety standpoint, at some point, we've got to look at rebuilding the north end of the Weirs Boardwalk. You'll see a little bit of money that we're putting in there for some initial study piece to it, to get somebody to go in and knows Wood can do some assessment, determine what the supporting structure needs. May not need much, may need some.
So you're doing constant repair to that, though?
We're doing constant repair, but we need to start looking at the understructure to it and see what needs to be done.
Wes,
Yes,
I want to go back to the Court Street Fair to Main.
right,
Right, so you're looking to do that in 2020?
spring of 2020.
So
What you'll have done.
next year is you're doing the bridge and then from the bridge to Belmont?
No, so in 2020, excuse me, the fall of 19, we're doing the bridge. Okay, bridge is done, then we go from where we ended off at Fair Street this year, and we go towards Main Street.
What about from the bridge up to the Belmont line?
Bridge off the Belmont line is further out.
So 19,
'Cause
you're only doing a bridge?
Correct.
Really?
Because I'm trying to that's gonna be in and of itself a major project for the businesses, so let's focus on that piece.
Right.
Then we're moving away from the businesses in that area again, and then give it a few years and we'll come back and do the other piece.
Give them time to sell their businesses in the interim, and then the new
We're-
owners
we're-
won't
By the time
know.
we get Court Street done, we're gonna have to redo it again.
We shouldn't at this point, but I'll be honest, our design is we're expecting that in about the 12 to 15 year point, we're gonna have to mill off the top of it, and then we're gonna have to come in and put another layer of surface asphalt on it.
Right.
Because you're gonna have rutting, and you're gonna have sufficient cracks on it that you wanna give it a good coat again. This is not, you know, a 20-year solution, it's a 20-year plus solution with the proper maintenance in between. Let's see. We have one bridge that's on the red list that is not funded at the state level yet. That's the Langley Cove.
Yep.
You'll see later on that we're trying to get a little bit of seed money to maybe help convince the state to put it onto their program. So from the planning standpoint, we need to start doing something to determine how we want to set up bike lanes and sidewalk along Weirs Boulevard, not necessarily construction, it's just big picture wise, planning, how do we want to make it work? So as we do construction, we have a game plan. And then at some point, we also got to inspect the Weirs docks, check the pilings and stuff that support it, to make sure there's nothing that we have to really do for the future.
Can I ask where the bridge at Langley Cove is?
As you're coming down, you know where our pump station is?
Yep.
It's right before the pump station as you're heading towards the Weirs Boulevard traffic circle.
Okay.
There's
So,
a brook that discharges into the cove, and you'll see it's
Right.
a lot of siltation there, and
Isn't it
it's
after
really
the
narrow, really
Pardon?
Not a
shallow.
noticeable bridge.
Isn't it after the pump station
no,
if you're going north?
if you're going north, it's just before the pump station.
Right. And that's where the Langley Cove development is gonna be,
Yeah.
with another 219, or 290 houses, and changing all the flow down through that brook.
But they assure us that there will be no impact.
Sure.
But
Santa Claus coming when?
No, the planning department's assuring us that,
No, they did.
No, the developer did.
but you're
Trust
watching.
me.
You're
And our
watching
third-
do it
But
Our
it's
third-
planning that's got to hold their feet to the
And our
fire.
third-party review
Yes.
also agreed
Right.
with that.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
what we're looking for the DPW itself is money to build a pole barn that'll go over our large trucks and our 550s that have the sanders in the back, so we could preload it at times and slide it underneath the pole barn to keep it from getting wet. We used to be able to, and we still do to agree, because we kept one of the old ones to be able to, one of the old sander-only trucks, to be able to do the dirt roads.
Right.
But the new ones with the salters on the back just won't fit into our base. So we are now at the point where it's good operationally, but it's not supporting, all
You're
aspects
gonna
of
build
it.
that where, on the sinking land?
Well, that next slide's coming up for
Okay.
discussion. Okay.
I know, you're gonna tie this all together in some
Yes, the next slide.
mystical way.
We did have an interesting incident that happened not long ago. We have a 6-inch water main that comes up into our building, supply potable water to us. The floor was sinking so bad, it put enough pressure on the ductile iron pipe and snapped it. Luckily, it was during work hours, so we were there to catch it. We got the water turned off. We were able to control where the water went. If it had happened after hours, it would have gotten into our plan room, and we would have lost all of our documents.
Oh, my
Because the
geez.
water just would have seeped up into everything.
Oh, my God.
So what we're looking at is some sort of documentation storage system where we can come in, we can scan everything that we got, put it into a system that you can find, and then store it. So if anything ever happens to our one set of documents, we have backup. Laconia parking garage, it's still on the list as a placeholder to determine what you want to do. But we're typically spending someplace in the vicinity of $20,000 a year to inspect it and do whatever we need to do to fix it to make sure it's safe to use that second floor deck again.
With no plans for the third floor, correct?
No plans for the third floor. If we want to use the third floor, we're going to have to put a lot of money into it to reinforce it.
Is that closed to vehicular traffic now?
The third deck is, yes,
Oh,
top deck,
okay.
you can't go up.
There's plans to redo that whole thing, but they're sitting on the shelf.
Right.
It's gonna cost $4 million.
I parked in that second level today, Bob, and I was kind of surprised, there were probably 6 or 7 spots left besides what I had there.
Yeah, it's packed up there.
That was at 10 this morning, or about quarter to 10.
Yeah, we've already had plans all drawn up to redo that whole thing with a glass front, with an elevator in the front glassed.
Yeah.
To get rid of the sidewalk, the stairwells on the inside, and completely redo the whole thing. So it was around $4 million, so it's probably 4.5 now anyway.
We're going to do our best to keep it up, but at some point,
There is a plan.
Yeah. No,
at
I-
some point, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to keep those ramps up to it open.
In its present condition, it really can't.
The ramp's going up, so if we lose the ramps, then basically.
Correct. I mean,
we have nothing.
we're going to keep cribbing it and putting blocking bracing up it, but at some point,
It's gonna go.
I don't know if we'll be able to keep doing it and make it safe.
And the reason I
When,
parked there
who
was
knows?
because there was nothing. This whole street, the lot was totally full, except for the 2-hour stuff. So I went around the loop, and there were a couple over there by Hector's on the street, and everything else is 2 hours, and I was here all day, so it was full today. Maybe the weather or something, I don't know,
No,
but
it's every day.
Yeah,
I don't doubt it.
yeah. So what we don't spend, if we have a little bit left each year, it rolls over to the next, so in case the next year we gotta do more repairs, we got the money available. So we're planning about 20,000 a year, even though it may cost us more in one particular year.
And does that include maintenance?
No, this is just for inspection and that piece. The maintenance comes out of my operational dollars.
We're keeping the drains unplugged, not clogged, and
Right.
water drains and all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. DPW facilities, we are doing that study right now to determine what we can do to stabilize the building. The latest prediction of when that should be done is either someplace between the end of October and the middle of November. So that will give us a pretty good idea of what the costs are and whether the cost of fixing it are almost equal to the cost of building new. That's what we've got to find out. Basically, what they're looking at, or what the two key pieces is, we got to stabilize the ground. As you said, it's already an old wetland area. We know we have at least a 6-foot thick layer of peat underneath that piece. And the recent test that we did to try to figure out how deep it is closer to the building, we actually drilled through either stumps or actual trees itself. So they were just stuffing everything in there they could do for fill. The other projects that we need, whether we fund it or not, really should be hitched to what the results come back. We really need the pole barn, but if we got to redo the building, the pole barn may want to wait for that piece.
Right.
I'm not saying we really need the pole barn, but that study will determine, does it make sense to do at this point or not? Vehicle bay doors, that's small dollar. We may have to do it anyways just to get it last long enough to when we can do something. And then the parking lot at my main building at Bisson, you can see as you go through it floats. It's the same problem. The ground's sinking underneath it, and it's just whatever it happens to be at that point. And then Messer Street's just a matter of age. The asphalt around the garages just fell apart.
The whole area between the Messer Street Bridge and the proximate location where Dow Fuels is, or used to be,
Right.
which is the building that was just raised at the intersection of Messer and Union. That, when we were kids, we played in that area. We were in that lake diving for bottles and stuff. And my uncle told me, he said, this was all swamp, and it was all filled with construction debris. We found car parts and all kinds of stuff in the water, where they were just, it was a dump. It was the city's first dump. And then they put sand on top of it, and they said, ooh, let's develop it. So I think that's what happened in there. It used to flood every year until they replaced the culvert that runs right behind your building,
Yep.
between your building and Irwin's. I don't know if it makes sense to be located there, if it's all that kind of land, that kind of wet.
Part of the problem is where do you put us if you move us?
Guilford, maybe.
Part of the
I don't know.
Well, that's a big part of the problem.
Well, the airport's in Guilford.
The-
We could put all our infrastructure over there.
The Moore Road landfill that you'll see more, there's actually about 60 acres at that site. How much is landfill, how much isn't? But 47 of those acres is in Guilford.
Right,
So,
What are you talking about?
the Moore Road landfill,
yeah.
so that's the only really available land that I know of that's gonna be big enough for public works, and it depends upon where all the junk is underneath, because you don't wanna move us from one landfill to another landfill.
What about the airport?
I'm not,
Far.
yeah,
What
Is
about,
it?
I hate to say this, but old military in me, you want multiple routes for DPW to get out to to do its work.
Oh, I see,
The
right.
best place to locate us is someplace around the state school property.
not Spruce Street?
Pardon?
Spruce Street by the dog park?
No,
Oh, okay.
because the
20
benefit there,
25 acres there.
we can pop onto Meredith Center Road, we can head north on Parade, we can go on Elm, or we can head south on Parade.
Right.
I mean,
Don't
for
own it.
location-wise,
We
it's,
don't own it.
right, but we don't own it.
We have
That was-
that 99-year lease on that 10-acre
Yeah, but you don't want to put
Right.
DPW there. I mean, that's
But
valuable property.
they're really,
Say, who knows?
Place that the site.
I don't want, excuse me, I don't want to swap it for a parking lot, I can tell you that.
Right. Bruce, the 10 acres, is that the corner where at one point they were thinking of citing the high school? Is that what
No,
we're talking
That's
about?
further up.
No, that's further up.
That's
This is-
McIntyre's property, across from the entrance to Southdown.
Oh, okay.
There's that property there.
Oh, yeah, okay.
This is the one where Old North Main and North Main come together. There's a triangular piece there,
Right.
an acre piece. The city has a 99-year lease on.
On the Opeachy side,
Yes.
right.
and, I mean, we need a lot of space.
Yeah,
And you'll see more of it as we come down.
that's probably a better use for that.
So we've got to think of something. I think the results may prove that it's going to be cheaper to build new than try to fix the old building, because you're going to have to move us out of the old building to fix it. Because you're going to have to jack up the floor.
It would probably involve, it would involve removing a lot of material, but I would say build a new building in where you got the parking lot now.
Right,
And build it big enough so that you could put your pole barn on the side of it.
Right.
yes.
And you know, one of them,
But that means to do that, you're moving us basically off the site someplace to do
not
it.
necessarily, I mean, you could use the back side of that.
Could have the Army Corps of Engineers come in and build some
I think you
Quonset
could
huts for
use what you have,
Don't
maybe you have to put your big truck somewhere. I mean, how long is it gonna take to build that? I mean, it won't take that long.
I wouldn't be surprised. Depends upon what they have to do, that we're talking at least 9 months.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe, but, but you'd have to dig out maybe a
Right.
lot of stuff.
you'd have to dig out a lot of stuff.
But-
So the study will tell us more in regards to does it make economic sense to fix the building that we have.
Assuming that it makes economic sense, is there the room to enlarge the vehicle door? If you're gonna replace them,
If you're doing it, you're gonna have to go up, which means instantly at that point,
It's not,
you're talking tear down, because your structure's not gonna
Okay.
support it.
Okay.
So if you want to put it inside that existing facility's going, because it just can't take the size.
and I went over there not long ago when I was talking to somebody, but there's a hole drilled in the floor
Oh, a bunch of holes.
where there is no material up to the cement. It's
No.
like 6 or 8 inches below the cement.
Space?
It's just a space.
Yes,
Yep.
because the
there's a
floor is,
void
set-
there.
that's why the floor's dropped, because there's
So-
nothing underneath it, and it's not structural, it just
If you
dropped.
look at the electrical panels, the wires are actually coming out of the panels because it's sinking.
Not anymore, we had to fix, it got
Oh,
to
you
the
did
point,
get it
we had
fixed?
to, get it fixed.
Okay, because I was gonna say, that's gonna make some major sparking if,
So,
Well, if you had to do a major construction project on that site, you could stabilize that site quite a bit, couldn't you?
I suspect what you would have to do to build a building down there, you're gonna drive piles,
Right,
and then you're gonna make your floor structural.
right.
Then for parking, you're gonna have to probably put in some low-density fill, which is typically, and I hate to say it, styrofoam. I've done it other places.
Right.
They empty out the spot, they put in styrofoam on it, and they put cover back on it. And the styrofoam, if you contain it right, will support heavy loads.
Right. So we should be saving all our Dunkin' Donuts cups.
For those of you that go there.
Yes,
Go and say,
okay.
question about the,
What, really?
question about the yard,
Yes.
west
Yep.
on Messer Street.
Yes.
Do you have money in your paving budget to pave that? I mean, I would think you would,
Uh,
to at least to put a coat over that or
I
something.
could out of it. I just want to make sure I have council buy-in on that one, because technically, we're taking road money and we're turning it into parking lot.
Where's
As
that?
long
I
as the
can't
council says
imagine it's gonna
okay.
cost that much to put
I don't think so, but
a 2-inch coat on there or
The
whatever.
old Public Works barn, you mean?
Yeah, that's terrible there.
Oh, yeah.
it just,
Because,
it's
I mean,
just fell apart.
People
that's all.
go there to get sand and that stuff there, and you
Oh, I
almost
know, I
need
go
a truck to get in there.
But with all the trucks that do use that, Public Works trucks, I mean, is 2 inches gonna last that long?
2 inches is a good.
That was their main garage when we were kids. I remember that.
I will state, since we're talking at that point, the new ladder that the fire department has doesn't fit into the maintenance building.
Right.
It's too big. If we need to do inside maintenance, we empty everything out of the blue storage building move it in there as far forward as we can get, shut the door, put in as many heaters as we can get, because it's not heated if it's wintertime, and try to fix it. If it's bad enough that we can't do that, we ship it out to get it fixed.
And you don't do work right at the station, there's no place to do that, because that's obviously inside there.
Correct.
You don't have portable,
The old ladder we can still fit in. It's tricky, but you can get it in there.
We still have that old grader in there.
Grader's gone.
Is it oh, good. Okay.
Yep, grader's gone. It got to the point where
What do we have in there now? Do you have any police cruisers or?
we have whatever is out of season. So it's the winter tractors and the sanders, and then, you know, all our pumps and everything, and all the mowers. When it comes wintertime, you flip everything around.
Right.
Okay. All right, roads, out years. Court Street, Bridge to Belmont, we've got planned, but it's in the out year timeframe. And we'll start looking at what we'll need to do from Stark to Lake Street on Union Avenue. Some other long-term ones in the out years, Weirs Boulevard. We know we've got to fix that road at some point, but part of the issue there is drainage, so we need to start thinking about what we're doing for drainage on it. I'm going to try to take it out of my little bit of study money I get. We've got one stormwater system that actually goes underneath the building. And it's old enough now that heavy rainfall, it's an old stone-built one, it comes up into the basement. So we've got to get it out from underneath
What
there at
building?
some. So at the corner of South Pine and Main Street. It goes kitty corner across underneath the building that's on as you're looking up on the right side.
The
I think so.
Al's building there, the
Yeah.
apartment building?
Yep. I just
That,
can't
that
remember.
whole area, I mean, that goes all the way to Edward Street, that's a mess.
Yeah. So it's gonna, if to get it out from underneath the building, we're gonna have to do some whole rework in that area.
Wow.
White Oaks Road doesn't have a drainage. We're gonna have to do something in regards to it.
so I have a question.
Yes.
On Weirs Boulevard, it seemed like,
Bless you.
bless you, another one, bless you again. It seemed like there was a program, and maybe this is part of the road program that the council goes by, but I think you guys do that. It seemed like there was a stretch of the boulevard every year that was graded down and repaved.
And we're gonna do a surface coat, a shim on the section that's somewhat round by the Margate going towards, I can't remember what the name of those yellow cabins, and a little bit beyond, where that worst section of
Eastern Shore.
failure is.
Miner's Place.
Oh, is it mine?
That's the objects to get that before winter time,
But you're gonna do that this fall?
this fall.
And then in the spring, will there be another section? 'Cause
No, probably not. Not with, this will be the first year coming up where we're making 2 payments on the bonds. So my money will be someplace in the vicinity of about, I think, around 900,000. Depends on what city manager can do to put money into the program.
And does it make sense to do that in the fall versus the spring? That
What it
section?
really comes down to is construction time. Because you don't want to shut Weirs Boulevard down from basically Memorial Day to Labor Day.
No,
It's
you
too
don't, but-
busy.
but if
So
you-
your actual longest construction period is from after Labor Day to when all the plants close, which depending upon where we're getting our asphalt, it's either the 15th of November or the first week in December.
So does it make sense to you couldn't do it like from March or April to the end of May? You couldn't get that section done? Because it seems to
No,
me they
the-
used to
the-
do that in a short time like
The
that.
problem what you've got is if you're not fixing the drainage underneath it, you're back to where we are. Because most of
No,
our
do the-
problems associated, there's no water.
Oh, I'm sorry,
drainage.
I didn't know you were gonna do the drainage. I
You gotta
thought
do
you was
the,
gonna
if we're
skim
gonna
coat it.
put big money into the surface, you gotta get the drainage working right.
That's boulevard's a mess for drainage.
Yes, it's drainage.
Aware of that.
It's all-
You know there's cow tunnels?
Yes.
There are cow tunnels. Did you know that?
I
We
think
did
they
a
fixed
plan
those a
years
long
ago,
time
and there's this dotted line, and it goes under the boulevard. There's a cow tunnel, and somebody, the planner told me at the time, he said, oh yeah, it's still there. Apparently, when they improved that road, there were farmers up on the hill on White Oaks Road that wanted water access for their cows, so they built a cow tunnel. Could not make this stuff up.
Okay,
I see that.
whatever,
I know where that is.
whatever results we get back from the
old Pogg's
inspection
Bay.
and analysis on the pedestrian bridge in the downtown, that will go out a few years and we'll start programming the money to do that work. So it's in, the actual construction piece is in the out years. And then the other piece to it is we gotta do something to the Beacon Street East parking lot, but that really hinges on what you wanna do with the garage. Because if you're gonna build a new garage in the Beacon Street parking lot, you don't wanna put a whole bunch of money into it. But we gotta do something. So it's sort of it's an iterative process, we have to start working on that.
I know some people have.
Bridges, Langley Cove we're still trying to get it into it. We're trying to get it in fairly quickly. Hilliard Road and Messer Street are some next ones and that we'll be working on. And then, just for your information, the Wood Bridge over the railroad tracks on Weirs Beach is in the plan to be removed by the state in 2025. And they have they said they're going to put some money in to improve one of the two intersections so that it's more all season.
I have a question about that.
That's historical.
Yeah, well, I have a question about that. That's a state decision strictly?
Yep.
Okay,
State
that's all
bridge.
I-
It's part of
So
the railroad
we have
infrastructure.
political input to it, but the state doesn't want to put money into fixing that bridge.
I'm sure the state doesn't like to put money in a lot of things, but
So,
I think Counselor Hamill's right. There's gonna be an outcry on that.
correct.
Because both those other intersections are not capable of,
And that's,
Handling.
isn't that where they put a lot of porta potties on there for Bike Week?
well, that
On the
not,
bridge?
that notwithstanding,
They used to.
the fact is that the intersection by Weather Vane is certainly not meant to be an intersection.
No.
No,
Now, I will say that
it's
when
an
we
old
built
grade
it,
crossing that shouldn't have been an
when we
intersection
built
at
it,
all.
I'll be honest, we made thicker concrete there in case that did come to become a,
Concrete?
yeah. If you look at it, we've got a concrete apron that's right in that spot.
Concrete. You heard that word. I just think there's gonna be a huge outcry. You know what I'm talking about.
I haven't a clue.
Concrete, we talked about concrete roads and stuff.
Yes, we did.
And I'm happy to see they're using that some places. Anyway,
We should.
Bob, I'm just saying that, that's not that far off. And
What's that?
2025, and I've heard people grumbling about this thought of taking that bridge down. And I'm glad to hear it's the state, not the city strictly that's talking about that, the state. So I expect we need to start working about, talking about that now as a city to the DOT.
They're also replacing the bridge over the railroad.
I understand, but they're replacing it they're replacing the bridge.
Yeah.
They're not just gonna tear
That's
it down and
next year
say,
they're doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. But they've got a plan for that, with the road going,
We don't
a
know yet.
temporary road.
They actually don't right now.
Oh, they've
They have
stopped
not
that
been
plan?
able to
Road
get
is a
permission.
Temporary road.
No.
No, no, no,
There's
no.
a
no,
meeting
no, no.
November 9th.
It
Yeah,
was
you
They've
make-
not been able to get permission.
Which
so
bridge
far
now are
from
we
the
talking
private
about?
property owners
Through
to
the
make that.
drive-in
Right.
and the bridge that goes
So
on
does
the
the meeting-
railroad
Oh, my
tracks.
God.
Is the meeting
The
November
railroad
9th?
part of that bridge, you mean?
Right now, there's a tentative meeting of November 9th through the state
Yep.
here,
Okay.
right?
We know.
Yeah.
We're commissioners.
Yeah, another thing we got
I'm
stuck
not
on.
kidding you.
Okay, getting back on track, another federal regulatory requirement since the 1990s, and I have not found one that's been performed by the city, is an ADA self-assessment. And I want to make sure everyone understands that is not just infrastructure. That's everything. Do all our softwares meet ADA? Do we have the right people, as being a policy person in charge of this element of ADA and such?
No.
It is not just, construction. It's everything. Okay.
It's a Friday.
Annual programs, maintenance and repair of city streets, that's that 1.6 million that we tend to get every year. Again, we're paying the bond payments for the 5 million dollars out of that. So it's depending upon what Scott is able to put more money into it or not. It could be around 900 to 1.1 million. We'll see what comes out of it this year. Citywide drainage, we are typically get someplace in the neighborhood of about 125,000 for it. This year, we took part of it to be able to work on the Messer Dutile project. Next year, we're taking a part of it to be able to complete the Messer Dutile project. So that's why we split it up. We're doing the piece now we need to get done, when the drawdown is, and we'll wait till next fiscal year and do the piece that's on the Messer Street side of the railroad tracks. Stormwater engineering studies, we get 25,000 a year to look at any place. That's what we're starting to look for the small things such as the problem at South Pine and Main Street. Let's see, sidewalks, we're gonna start having a program similar to what we have for pavement, a sidewalk management program. Start keeping them up so we can meet our ADA requirements that are out there instead of letting them fall apart. This, timing-wise, we're gonna try to use that money from previous years to do the bump outs at Vista before winter closes. And then we're looking at Grant Street and Harvard Street for the sidewalks.
Where are these bump outs going?
The Vista grocery store, right on the Main Street between Vista and the bank.
It's where a guy got killed.
Oh, I know, there's people here all the time. I get that. I get that. It's just like,
It's only
it's
gonna
just
come-
my,
it's just-
yeah, it's okay.
Coming out of space of a car.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah, you can see we painted where basically state law says you can't park within 20 feet of an approach to a crosswalk. So this year we painted out at that crossing the distance it's supposed to be, so it should improve to a degree the visibility of people who are attempting to cross there. Let's see, fence, guardrails, and retaining walls, that's a piece that whenever we lose or have to install more black fence for safety or replace guardrails, it comes out of here, as well as any retaining walls that we have to do alongside of a road. DPW vehicle purchase, you'll see more on that later, but it's an annual program. And then the Moran Road landfill is, at least the initial phases will be an annual program because Scott's trying to give us a little bit of money each year to keep the planning going until we're at the point where we're ready to do design and then contract the work. And then eventually we have to get to the remediation project on it.
I have a question about that. Is there any any Superfund help for that?
There is a state program, but the legislature has not put any money into it to help with old landfills.
Go figure.
Right. Associated with Moran Road landfill, because we're basically talking the same piece of ground, is we want to create a city recycling center. And I want to make sure you understand, we're not talking about the stuff we pick up curbside. We're talking about the stuff that we generate as a public works from all the asphalt and the concrete that we pull out. We're right now paying to dispose of that. And at times, Guilford is more than happy to take it if they have room available. When they don't have a room available, we gotta send it to one of the sites where we can pay for that disposal. The other piece to it is the yard waste component. None of the farms in the area want our yard waste because it's got so much paper and other products in it. Guilford, when they have room, will take our yard waste. When they're out full, then we have to find another spot to do it. And the airport was gracious enough this time to give us a little bit of land. And so we're doing some mulching and compost over on some of the landfill property that's on the south side of Lily Pond Road.
Right.
Yep.
What about things like road sanding?
That's the next piece that we're talking about. It has been in existence for a while, but the state really hasn't done any enforcement on it. It's what they call limited reuse soils. It is not hazardous material, but it's contaminated enough that you can't put it on any clean site. And the typical things they talk about are street sweepings, what you pull out of the catch basins, and road reconstruction material. You can leave it in the right-of-way, but you can't move it out of the right-of-way without having a permit. You can't store it anyplace without having a permit. So as part of the Moran Road landfill site, what we're looking at is what are our options to take advantage of that and create a soil transfer station at that site that can process that soil. And, oh, by the way, maybe we can use it to cap the landfill, and then we can take other people's material, process it for a fee, and use it to cap the landfill. There's a new firm that bought ESMI. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about. They're out of Loudon. They're the ones in the regional who do all the processing of contaminated soil. They're real interested in coming up here and operating that under contract. You know, we lease them the site or something, but we've got a whole bunch of things to get through before we can get to that stage.
Fancy factory that burns dirt.
This wouldn't handle the the hazardous piece. It would handle those pieces that theoretically, they could just go and mix it with other less contaminated soil, get it to a level that's even further down, and then we could use it for other uses. Let's see. And then the options, again, for us is paying for disposal or creating this soil transfer station. Sanitary sewer fund, same as the water department. It's a revenue account, self-generating money to do it. These are the projects that we've got coming up. Court Street Phase 2, Durkee Brook Bridge, just like the water department did, then Union Avenue and Elm Street. I highly suspect that within the next year to year and a half, I will have to do something on Elm Street from just about where the school is, going over the hill down towards the golf course. If you look at it, you can get distinctive signs of subbase failure along the edge. And from talking with Paul Busby when they did the last piece of it, there's a clay slug up there around the school. So that's what I'm thinking is happening. We're getting subbase failure underneath it, and we're gonna have to go up and do so what we did to Pleasant Street.
What's a clay slug?
Basically, it's an area where we have a high concentration of clay in it, and generally, unless you do some exotic things, you can't really do much using clay as a base for a road. When it gets wet, it just is too flexible.
It goes liquid, basically.
Yeah. It will go down in one spot and pop up in another as you go across it. Sewer improvements is the other piece, and the typical what you'll see for us is you might see a big truck with a whole bunch of white fabric on the back. That's lining. That's when it's in good enough condition we don't have to replace it, but we can blow a new material through it, expand it, and then it sets and seals it from any outside water coming in and gives it additional strength.
Kind of like a stent?
Kind of like a stent. We've used it many places in the city. We did underneath North Main, we did underneath Lakeside when we knew we were going to have problems by just by the vibration of the construction project.
Right.
So we go through and we did it ahead of time. We also will do it when it's not associated with a construction project, when we don't like the looks of the cracks and everything that are in it, and it's time to protect it so we don't lose the road. Got 18 pump stations. We're in a constant cycle of doing work on them. We got some pump stations that have pumps from the 50s, and they still work right, but when the part goes, most of the time, we got to get it manufactured. So we're trying to get them more up to date, and we're doing the same thing.
These are centrifugal pumps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're putting variable frequency drives on it, everything to help lower our cost and make it easier for us.
Right.
We do not, just to make sure everyone understands, we do not own the pump station that's on the state school property. That's state funded. So if we take over that at some point, we may have a 19th pump station. The Vector truck is getting close to being 13 years old. Typically, those high maintenance type trucks, you try to replace in the 12 to 13 year point.
Right.
For 2 years, we've been saving $150 a year apiece. This is our third year. After we get that money, we'll have enough to buy a replacement for it. So we're looking at the third and final installment this year, and we'll start going through the process of building our specifications for it to get the truck on board. One of the things we're doing in conjunction with that is, where do you dump your sewage? Right now, we have access to lagoons at New Hampton. If at some point they shut us off from there, we won't have any place to dump our sewage unless we take it all the way to Allentown. So we're looking at what options that we have to do it and what the cost is of building a dump station for ourselves. So then we can configure our truck to support that dump station. And if we do one good enough, we may be able to charge for, some of the other smaller ones to.
Franklin.
No, because they don't want, they're not designed to handle, they're designed to handle just sewage that's coming off of that type of truck. They don't want all that other junk that, comes out of our system.
Yeah.
The grease, oil, and fats, and the sanitary napkins and everything else that are in there. The biggest thing we tend to find right now are those, they say flushable hand wipes or whatever. They're not flushable. And then we've got placeholders in it that you'll see for expansion into developed areas in case the city council decides it wants to do it and what the cost share is. So that we'll have money available through a bonding type to be able to pay the city share for it. or I should say the ratepayers' share. Okay, some fast updates. Langley Cove bridge over Weirs Boulevard. What we're looking at is to get $20,000 in seed money that we can then go to the state, say, look, the city council's serious, they put money to it. Maybe that'll help us getting in the program. Rebuild north end of the boardwalk. Again, it's out the year 2021. At some point, we've got to get it inspected so we can make sure we know what the supporting columns are good enough. And then, do we want to put Trex or whatever that other product down to make it look like the rest of it? That's really a policy decision at that point, but we do need to make sure it's safe. Downtown pedestrian bridge, there's some pictures of the underside. As soon as we get an idea of what we need to do to it, then we'll come back and start programming that work for a few years out. I got a placeholder in for $175,000 in 2021. Inspect the dock, same thing, asking for a little bit of money to do some analysis for it and determine if anything needs to be done or not. And Moran Road landfill, there is the picture. This is south of the Reed's wrecking yard. We have one document, and without much backup, that shows we still have a portion of the landfill that's north of Reed's. It says it was the old construction and demolition debris for the urban renewal was actually on the north side of it. So we may at some point get told by Department of Environmental Services that we got to remediate that portion too.
Do you remember who operated that? Was that Bisson that did that?
I couldn't tell you who operated it. The history that we have associated with it is very thin. I know that I found an old briefing from 1975 to the city council that said the main landfill for trash type stuff closed in '62 on Moran Road land site. That's all we have for details on it. After that, it was been used by the city and probably some others, not who weren't supposed to, as a really construction demolition debris landfill. You go walk on it, you'll see all the junk concrete, junk asphalt that's on the surface.
I think it was Frank Bisson and Son, and that was the namesake for Bisson Avenue.
Right.
And they were a big municipal contractor. And I remember hearing about construction debris being dumped up there on Moran Road by
And
them.
they haven't done any real analysis, but
They did a lot of the demo
Right.
downtown
Yep.
during urban renewal.
We're in the final phases of selecting the consultant to help us with it. We're down to our last 4, and we do interviews in the next week or so. Project updates, again, we're windowing for between Labor Day and Columbus Day for replacing that bridge. What'll happen is they'll build the bridge either beside it or they'll bring it in on a truck. They'll close it for a short period of time, demolish the old abutments, put the new abutments in, and they'll drop the bridge on top of it.
What do you think a short period of time is?
We're giving them basically 4 weeks of closure. That's what we're saying. There'll be other impacts to it, but the bridge won't be in that spot for about 4 weeks. Again, we're short some money on that. We need to get it in this budget so we can make our match. Court Street from Fair to Main, spring of 2020 again. And again, $1 million in bond. We know we'll probably have to do a little bit from our annual road program to make it work. But we also will have what we have from the transportation fund to date has been saved up to put into it also.
I'm sorry, but 4 weeks, so that 4-week period at the bridge there on Court
Right.
Street, that means the road is closed.
That means the road is closed.
So I'm just asking, and I know Bob is sensitive to money, as all the counselors are. That's such a huge timeline for those businesses down there.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking is,
Right.
is it possible to maybe say, you know what, we're gonna get some more money from wherever that is, and speed up the construction by having them working late into the night?
They're gonna be doing that anyways here to do it in that time frame. The only other option that you have is you can go and do like they're doing on Interstate 93 right now. You do 1 lane at a side, but that's at least 4 months of construction, at least, and you're gonna be messing up traffic worse than what we're doing right now.
No, I understand.
I know the party store is really, they want it to close. They'd rather have a very short period of time for the impact, and because part of it, they want to rent out the site for the contractor.
Okay, so that,
So-
that nullifies that, but what
They
I'm-
get a paid
but-
vacation, I like that.
But I'm thinking about like the restaurant down there and some other places
I
that are.
understand that entirely. Yeah, I could say we could throw more money and make it 2 weeks, but he may not make it. I'm just saying,
Well, I-
realistically, it's probably a 4
Try-
weeks.
When we did Fair Street Bridge, you were here at that?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, that was a big, we were gonna shut that down, because it was gonna take a lot less time.
Right.
But the businesses didn't want that.
Right.
so, Because of the traffic from,
I remember that, but so what
the
they did was.
industrial park and
they
all
did-
that uses that.
They did it half at a time, correct? They did, they did
It took
something,
quite a while, it took all summer to do that.
but it was a half and a half. if
Half,
I-
and- yeah, that, half and half.
Right, half and half. I
Now,
I
this
just-
is a very, very
This
short
is-
span, which helps
The thing
us.
is with, well, guess it doesn't much matter, but it's a different, it's horizontal other than in line with the road it goes.
You know, I'm not trying to be a pain in the, but I,
But
You don't have to
But-
try.
But,
thank you, then I won't worry about it. So I go back to that Interstate 95 in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Right.
Where they had a tanker blow up or catch on fire underneath the bridge, and the bridge collapsed. And that's either 3 or 4 lanes on each side. And Wes, you must, in your
Yeah, I know.
studies, how long did it take from to rebuild that bridge?
I can't remember that
I
one,
believe
but
it
it's
was
fast.
about 2 weeks, 2 to 3
Oh,
weeks.
no, it wasn't.
I
Yeah.
think it was, I think,
If it was only one portion, probably. Because
if
they,
they
because
went
what they
crazy
could do is
building that,
take out
rebuilding
that
that.
one section and drop in a new section.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
it was a
All
whole
I know
length,
is,
then,
is
like
when,
Wes, can't they close one half and do the work underneath and then drop the bridge on top of it in a weekend?
no,
They
'Cause
do-
you gotta
that's what they
replace
do
the
on
abutments.
93, right?
you gotta replace the
It's
abutments.
not like you're just digging a trench and dropping a box.
No, I know, but can you close one lane and get ready for one side, close the other lane, get ready for the other side, and then drop the piece on after?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
this bridge,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not
we
that
can,
wide.
we
Not
can
big
say we
technical.
can require 2 weeks, but I don't wanna lie to the, the builder, the neighboring businesses.
well,
No,
Right.
it could easily slip. So we tell them it's,
But plus, we want a bridge that's gonna stay up, not like the prefab bridge in
you know, one in Florida.
Florida or
Yeah.
something they
Well,
put up.
Luckily,
That's a
ours
little
isn't as
different.
long as that.
Yeah.
We could
still.
put Charlie in charge of the
I
bridge.
just know that 4 weeks is business you can't make up, and for some of those businesses down there, it's gonna be,
Well,
it's
you
gonna
know,
be a killer. That's all I'm
Anytime you
saying.
do a
Right.
road, it's
Right.
painful for the people
It's
on that
painful.
road. When we
We're
did
getting the
Union
calls.
Avenue-
Trying to mitigate it,
Oh,
I'm trying
my
to
God,
mitigate
yeah.
that
Did
time.
Union Avenue from the
I,
school
I
to
understand that,
Messer
and the bridge on downtown Laconia, but I'm just trying to mitigate that, or,
Look what's going on Court Street right now.
Right.
I mean, it's
well, at
all
least,
summer long.
that's right, but cars are still going by businesses and able to pull in.
That's what they're doing, going
But it's
by.
more, the impact is more than just,
They won't even be going by with the bridge not there. So, well, maybe
But the real question
Hey,
is it
what
better
about
for,
when way back when, they closed Church Street, when they did that bridge? Closed. That was all summer, or maybe longer. It stopped at Busy Corner on one, Spar on one side and River Street on the other.
Yeah.
That whole bridge, that whole street was closed.
But you had a way to get there with Messer Street and then the other
well, they
street
did
in
it to
River,
Messer
so-
Street when they replaced that bridge
You go
too.
the bypass.
Well,
Okay, all right, I beat it to death,
the,
so, thank you.
What about a pontoon bridge? Is there any room that we could?
hey, here, I got a picture I could show you later. We actually looked to
don't say
see,
pontoon bridge to an ex-military engineer, it's just. not-
we actually looked to see if we could figure out a way to get from South Street, through the back to get onto, I think Durkee's the first one, or is it Addison? I can't remember.
It's Addison.
Addison. And the problem comes is I don't see any good way of getting between the houses.
Right.
We still would have to have DES permission to put a, temporary culvert or something in there to get the crossing. But I don't really see, if we have a nice friendly resident who's all associated with it, doesn't mind having trucks and vehicles coming too close to it, we could
That
get
ain't
through,
gonna
but,
happen.
no.
But, that's the
Haven't walked
major-
it yet, but I've
There's no
looked at
room
the-
for a temp bridge to go around it, right?
No, there isn't, because the houses are right there.
Yeah.
I mean,
The other
everything's,
side well, you still got that gas station.
Yes.
Wes?
When you had that meeting, most of the businesses were represented there,
Correct,
and it was thoroughly explained to them.
yes.
And I don't remember, well, there's one constituent that was a little concerned about 4 weeks, but
Is that deja vu?
no, this was.
Well, you should talk to your constituent that runs a deja vu.
Yes.
Down there.
We hear from Deja Vu weekly,
Okay, so.
maybe daily. So,
Okay.
Good.
So make sure you go eat there.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, yes, we can do that.
Why, are they totally upset with that?
They're in a
Concerned.
state of shock
Right.
of losing business for 4 weeks. If you don't believe me, go and ask them.
Okay,
Speak
I
to
will.
Brenda. Brenda's the owner there, and you can talk to her.
Yeah, but I'll admit, we're hurting it right now, just from what we're doing.
Well, so is Stafford Oil.
Yep.
Yeah, oh no, they're not
I
alone.
mean, I talked to the guy today, and he's a little upset because it's hurt business.
Right.
So imagine the bridge closed for 4 weeks. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
But it's okay. We don't need to beat it anymore.
Okay.
I'm done.
All right, Union Street, from Main to Guilford Avenue,
Union Ave, you mean?
is gonna go from, we're gonna time it. We wanna make sure we're out of Court Street entirely, because we know we'll probably have to do some of the work from the spring.
Right.
So we're out of Court Street, so Court Street can come through, and all we're doing is tying up, Union from Main going over the hill to Guilford. The plan for Union Avenue from Elm to Stark is, we know we're not gonna finish it this winter. But the problem comes in is you have a short construction season in the spring. We've gotta get enough work going in the Elm Street intersection back up to Chestnut and the Walnut area. So we're out of that intersection totally by Memorial Day of next year.
What are you doing there? The reason,
Uh,
are you gonna widen it by extending the retaining wall, or?
No, basically, that would have been real cost prohibitive. We have it set up design-wise, so at some point in the future, if the city council does decide, we will have 2 lanes on the southbound side of the intersection going south, so that the 2 lanes going south can then merge and go through. The biggest problem what we have associated with that intersection for southbound traffic are the ones who decide to make a left turn to go into the Case and Keg, Fratello's, or Clinton.
Yeah.
The post
Depending upon-
office.
Pardon?
The post office is the big,
Right.
the big
Yeah.
one.
Depending upon how it hits and what time frame, a car stopping to make that turn will take traffic back.
Right.
Stack it all.
So you want a center turn lane?
So I need to get a center turn lane, but the only way I can get a center turn lane is if I move the lanes out to it,
To the east,
to the east. So you've got right now,
which is taking land, right?
right, so I couldn't do that, so what we looked at was, we make the, left of the southbound lanes a left and through. You make the right lane a right and through. So what happens if a car stops, then you have the ability to get into the other lane and traffic can still go south.
Which they do now anyway.
I do it anyway,
That's,
yeah.
people do
I
that now all the
understand
time.
that, but
Jeez.
But some people
Somehow we
won't.
do it.
Some
But a lot
people
of
won't.
people won't do it
Okay,
because
that's okay.
it's right turn only.
That's okay.
Right.
And then if it, in the
Hey.
cycle, it hits no right turn on red, someone hits there and it just stacks traffic back further. So,
Somehow we seem to get through
So
it.
what, go back to what you're saying. You're leaving the option open for the city council to fund an extension
no,
to the west? You mean,
no, it all comes
there's
down
a
to
granite
lane management.
retaining wall
We
along
can't,
there.
the retaining wall, you can't blow out and get enough room,
Right.
okay? It's gonna be, you can do it, but it's gonna be very expensive, more than what we've got, and then we're starting to get property back from Irwin Marine and,
Irwin Marine and then Lakeport Landing.
right.
Right.
So I don't think that's a viable solution. So the only viable solution is you gotta make it 2 through lanes.
Yeah.
With the left being a through and left turn, and the right being a through and right turn.
Well, we're trying to make use of a roadway there that was designed for a horse track and a street railway. And now you're trying to get essentially 4 lanes of traffic in there, and you can't do it.
I will remind you, Peter, that before we had the bypass and before we had Interstate 93, all the traffic came up through there. That was in fact US 3, and the width was exactly the same thing there. And the only thing they did different was they took out McIntyre Circle, but somehow all that traffic, somehow miraculously flowed through there with exactly what we have
And
today.
it doesn't change my point that it was designed for a street railway and a horse track.
That may well be, but we had a lot more traffic back then, so.
And then that project will just take it to Stark,
Cars.
and we'll have to start looking at for future years what we do from Stark going over to Lake Street.
Yeah.
And Academy Street, again, coming out 2022 is the program year.
Yep.
Again, that's got 40,000 allocated against it. We're gonna have to allocate more money in that year to make our match.
Is that tree actually in the waterway?
It's actually in the bank.
Yeah. That's, that bridge is directly adjacent to the Du Bois Monument Company, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay.
DPW vehicle replacement, basically we get about $190,000 a year. So far, 132,000 of that is already allocated to bond or lease payments. We pay around the vicinity of about $67,000 a year for the bond payments that bought the trucks about 5 years ago.
Yep.
And then we're
That was
paying-
about what, let's see, three,
It was before I got here.
800, 700,000, I think.
Yeah. And then we're paying lease payments on a 5-year lease purchase for a cat loader, and just started making payments on a 5 years lease purchase for our last truck that we bought. So we've got, because a little bit left over from last year, we got around 80,000 this year to work with. We're looking at, what can we get 550 range to start replacing some of our older 550s that are getting beat up. My trucks generally, at least my plow trucks, it's not how many miles they have on them, it's how many years of salting they've got.
Right.
Because after a while, all your electrics are starting to go, and your framework and your body is starting to fall apart on you.
What, do you still do the painting projects on the vehicles to try and keep a few more years on them?
The answer is-
I mean, we
The
had
answer is
trucks.
I'd love to, but the legal answer is I can't at this point. We weren't meeting Department of Labor requirements, and we weren't meeting Department of Environmental Services in our paint operation. So I had to shut it down until we could meet safety and environmental standards.
Oh, my God.
We weren't operating in a paint booth. We were spray painting
They were
oil-based
holding their
paint.
breath.
Yep.
Right,
And you can do that as a private homeowner working on your own vehicle.
right,
You can't do it
No.
as a
You're
private
right.
agency.
right.
So we're looking now to see what our options are for a water-based paint or putting in some form of a paint booth. But I think it's gonna be cost prohibitive to convert that old building that we got to make it explosion-proof, which is what you're required to do if you use oil-based paint.
Which building are you using for that?
If you know where the New England Yard is, it's that first, you go down, you got the old horse barn on the left, it's the concrete one on the right.
Okay.
We
right.
store our Vector in there in the
Across the
winter.
tracks from Dutah?
Yes,
Talking about off
Yeah.
Messer?
yeah, off of Messer.
Yeah, that's all filled land too,
Yes, we know.
big time.
So if they just use a roller and a brush?
If they use a roller brush, they can do it.
Yeah.
You get some middle school kids with brushes and, maybe?
Yeah, right, you get kids to work around you.
We
Come
still would
on.
have some
come
environmental
on, what could
standards
go
we have to do,
wrong?
But it's a lot less.
Wow, that's a lot, Wes.
And,
last longer.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I do. I have a couple questions, and I gotta go back a little bit. When we look at the Weirs docks for, what their, condition and everything is, will there be any input to possibly looking at how to upgrade them for today's boats, vice the old
That's-
smaller boats?
Part of that, we're gonna have to make a policy decision if that's what we wanna do, because we're basically gonna have to redo the whole docks. Pull out pilings, change
Supersize 'em.
pilings.
Yeah.
Well, you go
We
from
can do
an
it.
8-foot boat. If you go in there on a weekend into the Weirs and something with a 10 or 12-foot beam on it is there, and they park out at the end of it, there's 3 spaces in there you can't
Correct.
get to.
Right.
So you really use up your dock space on a big weekend quickly. So just, being a tourist area and everything like that, we might want to consider some of
I
that.
do know that the pier is looking at expanding their dockage space, which they cannot do unless they make it public. Because they have reached that magic number that Department of Environmental Services has for how many dock spaces you're allowed for frontage. But if it's public dockage, there is no limit on that. So there may be an opportunity there to expand the additional public dockage if they decide to do that.
That's currently all private in there though,
It's
right?
all private, yes.
And then, doesn't Irwin's have some, still, some dock space?
You get some underneath.
That's what I meant,
That's all
underneath
still there.
the.
It's all still
pier.
there, yes.
That's
But
all
they
been
really,
upgraded.
they really want to,
Oh, but is that Irwin's? It's not Irwin's, is it?
Playground.
Well, it's the old Irwin
Right,
Gardens.
right, but they don't own
It's
the,
East Coast now.
Irwin's used to have that.
he really wants to expand it,
space,
but he
that's
can't
all.
expand it unless he makes it public.
Right.
So they're gonna have to make a decision on that, but that may help, you know, us, or our needs up there if they do that.
Yeah, it's be a good time we can work with them.
Yeah.
And my one other question on that is the bridge on Hilliard Road. Are we looking, when we replace that bridge, to make it large enough to be able to, in forward thinking here in our master plan and making things better, to be able to reutilize Hilliard Road, which the city has never given up its right to it?
It's a class 6 road, so technically we own the right of way.
Indeed, and I say, why is that not another way through when we take a look at how we're expanding our community and
That's
development?
a fine option to consider, but it's just,
I just want that bridge to be big enough.
How many
to
years out is that?
Handle that.
that's about, our rough estimate that we did, that's about a $7 million project.
Because we're about to
So-
reconvene the master plan steering committee.
Yeah.
And one of the things we want to look at is the Hilliard Road corridor.
So I don't know if it's able to be funded by the city unless there's some development in there that's gonna subsidize some of the costs.
Yeah,
$7 million, that's all, for that, from the end to Parade Road?
Basically, from where you parade to get to the where it ends
Where
right
the-
now.
where the,
And then you'd have about another 3 million
Where the
from there
brush
to
dump
the.
is? Where the
pardon?
brush dump is?
No, to about where it ends right now, where if you come down from,
Harmon Lane,
when you come down, right, get to Harglen Lane, and then you're gonna have to get Harglen Lane to, Endicott Street North up to grade, which is probably about another 3 mil.
right.
But then the problem comes in that piece is you got a lot of houses that are built right close to the, that, so are we gonna have to start buying property?
What?
Not that I know of.
There was discussion about providing water to that,
There was a development.
to that area.
Yeah.
That was we presented that as part of our,
Right,
the piece that we talked about, undeveloped areas. And we were looking at what it would take to do water, sewage, and road.
Right.
And I can't remember what the sewage number was, but the sewage, we basically have to go across country to get to the closest connection to the Winnipesaukee River Basin Program interceptor. Water would have to have a tank and pump to get it up to that high. And you figure a pump station, well, a tank's probably $1 million just in and of itself, never mind getting the water line to there.
What about the old tank at the Weirs? Well, and there's a lot of potential there, but you're right, it would require a great deal of private investment to make the city's investment in the infrastructure feasible, right?
Yeah, and the problem with the sewer side of the house, to keep it simple, is you can't run a big pipe and expect it to work if you only get a few houses there, because it won't, too little flow won't
Right,
work right.
exactly.
You've gotta, you're gonna have to build it in stages, and that may actually
Turn on
cost.
a hydrant and let it rip.
Could,
How, do you know how much the size of the water the state's putting in at the state school?
I don't, but it's
Big.
just it's a water line that's using the existing pressure. So once they get it to the Doobie Building
Yeah.
and to the 911, they can't go any higher because it doesn't have enough pressure.
Okay.
So they would have to get a pump station in operation to shoot it back up to tanks to develop the pressure they need for the rest of the site.
It looked to me like it was like 8-inch pipe maybe, something.
Yeah, it's pretty good
Yeah.
size that they're putting.
Well,
heard-
because
I
it's
heard-
fire flow they gotta have.
I
So
heard
wouldn't-
like 8-inch when we were at when they were discussing.
so I wouldn't be
that on the
surprised it's
future
good sized
use.
pipe.
Did they,
Did you
They
go
have to
to
have
that
fire flow
last
in those
meeting?
buildings.
Well,
Any other questions? Other-
anybody?
no, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Wonderful presentation. Is there any other business that we could deal with tonight?
Just want to remind everybody, next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, same bat time,
I
same
won't be
bat
here.
channel? Who's on deck next week?
Everybody
Fire,
else. Everybody else.
Next week you have
I won't be here either. But we
Fire.
can watch it.
Fire and Parks.
Amen.
Yeah, they were
I
nice
have-
yeah, they put me on a
party from a 9-year-old
day when the other
That's
departments were
March.
short.
You can have it right here, there's plenty of room, maybe.
They're down in Pembroke.
All right, you're excused.
Was it next, what?
Tuesday.
Tuesday,
6:30.
16th.
Not mentioned, that's not, there's, what is it, the?
all right.
And anybody who's interested, be happy to take you on a tour of the Public Works Building.
I may take you up on that. Curious about that. I'd like to see that, the hole with the gap, that's, it
Yeah,
intrigues
and
me.
We're
That's
expect-
not supposed to be a bearing floor, I assume, right?
I think
I just want to see.
Just a void underneath it.
It's on pilings on the outside, and then these grade beams about quarter of the way in on each side that has pilings on it, and the rest there's no pilings. And I don't think there's any pilings underneath the office area, other than, you know, the edge ones for the building itself.
Oh, man.
structure.
Well, they must have known when they were building it that it was wet, because those holes would have filled up with water the second they dug them, so. All right, any other business? I didn't get sensing there is no other business. Do we have a motion to
Make a
adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Sensing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Meeting is adjourned at 9:01 PM. Thank you all.